Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 19 meeting of the Glendale City Council, being called to order at 6:05. May I please have the roll call?
Council members Agajanian, Devine,
Here.
Najarian, Sinanian,
Here.
Mayor Garpetian.
Here. Flag salute.
Next will be the flag salute led by Councilmember Sinanian, followed by the invocation. Everyone please rise.
Please face the flag and join me in pledging allegiance to our nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. This evening, as we welcome the fall season into our lives, our thoughts turn to the promises of this wonderful time of harvest and giving thanks as the holidays are soon upon us. But let us take pause and pray for those who are affected by the earthquake in Mexico City and those who have lost loved ones and who may be searching for loved ones as we speak. Let us pray for our fellow Americans and everyone who is still recovering from the hurricanes of past and bracing for the next one in the Caribbean and on our eastern seaboard. Let us pray for the thousands who will spend sleepless nights hoping for the word on the outcome and relief of these disasters. We pray for the recovery from floods, hurricanes, and earthquakes and give thanks for our own safety and security. Let us keep those less fortunate in our thoughts in the coming weeks and do our part to ease their suffering through prayer and action. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. May I please have your report?
The agenda for the September 19th, 2017 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Friday, September 15, 2017 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Okay, what's next?
Next item is presentation and appointments. At 3A is agenda preview for the meetings of Tuesday, September 26, 2017.
Okay. Mr. Taktalian?
Good evening, Mayor Garpetian, members of the City Council. Next week's afternoon meetings for the Glendale Housing Authority only have the approval of minutes, followed by a special meeting of the Glendale City Council at 3 p.m. That'll be a report from the Director of Public Works regarding an overview of commercial solid waste collection services and franchising alternatives. The evening City Council meeting has a number of items under consent. At 4B, it'll be a report from the Director of Public Works regarding Senate Bill 1 related to the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017. Followed by another report from Public Works regarding the Municipal Services Building Exterior Protective Coatings Project. At 4D will be a report from Community Services and Parks regarding the proposed grant application to the California Habitat Conservation Fund program for the Seven Trees Trail Restoration Project. At 4E will be a report from the Chief Information Officer regarding funding for the 2016 United States Department of Homeland Security Urban Area Security Initiative Award for the City of Glendale in the amount of $2.2 million. And finally, a report from the City Attorney regarding the City of Glendale's response to the 2016-17 report on tows and impounds by the LA County Civil Grand Jury. Under action items, at 8A will be a report from the General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding the Wastewater Master Services Agreement with Richard C. Slade and Associates to provide professional services to serve as the court-appointed ULARA Waste Master. And finally, the last action item will be a report from our CIO regarding purchase of police air support communications equipment. Final item on that evening will be a hearing by the Director of Community Development regarding a appeal of tentative parcel map number GLN 1631 located at 2116 Rimcrest Drive. That was the one continued from August 29th.
Okay. What is next?
Next is the consent items, including minutes following a routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
I have a speaker card for 4B. And is there anything else that my colleagues would like to?
I'd like to pull, please, item 4C.
Okay. So are you going to move the rest? 4B and 4C.
And I believe 4B has been taken off calendar. Is that correct, Assistant CM?
Not to my knowledge.
That's fine. Is there a motion to move the remainder of the consent items?
4A and 4D.
I'll move the items.
I second. Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian? Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian?
Yes. Would you please read the
4B
item
is
4B?
4B is Director of Library Arts and Culture regarding purchase of books and materials from library vendors. B1 is a motion to approve increase of $90,000 to the purchase orders with 3 existing library vendors for the purchase of books and materials.
Okay, I have a speaker card, Zach Glazer.
Hello, Council. I hereby decree that the aforementioned hereby fundage shall be allocated to the buying of books. The people need knowledge. And officer, pay close attention to all those who oppose this, for they shall be banished for the land, and they are the true perpetrators of this civilization. The people don't need more TV shows. The people need more books. The people need more knowledge. The people need understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Glazer. Is there a motion to move 4B? Yes.
I'll move the item.
Is there a second?
I second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian? Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian?
Yes. Would you please read item 4C into the record?
4C is Director of Community Development regarding award of $175,000 city contract for property acquisition and property management agent. C1 is motion authorizing the city manager to prepare and execute professional services agreement with Overland Pacific and Cutler, Inc. in the amount of $150,000 to provide property acquisition and property management services. 2 is a motion authorizing the city manager to prepare and execute a professional services agreement with Epic Land Solutions in the amount of $25,000 to provide appraisal-related services.
Councilmember Devine?
Okay. On this item, we are asked to approve $150,000 for a 3-year period to the Overland Company. What happens if we exceed the $150,000 cap? What happens to do we have to come in again, or?
Yes, ma'am. Council member, Devine, members of council. So in this instance, we would, so it is $150,000 for 3 years, so anticipating on average $50,000 per year. But should we exceed that $150,000, we would come back to council at that time.
And what happens to the balance of the funds if we don't use the entire $150,000?
So OPC ends up invoicing us. So if that funding is not utilized, then it is simply funding that is still in the general fund.
Okay. All right. Then, and my last question concerns appears to be a contradiction on the matrix. The heading says fees topped at $275 an hour. Correct? For this particular company. Yes?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
You agree. Okay. Okay. Then, if you look at the billing terms, the letter on the billing terms, the printout.
I'm sorry, for the OPC contract?
Correct. The third paragraph says that in the event this contract extends 12 months beyond the initial date of execution, the hourly rates and any remaining amount in the contract shall be adjusted upwardly by 5% per year, per annum, compounded annually on the anniversary date of the contract. Now, one page says it is capped at $275, and this paragraph says that according to the terms of the contract, every year the fees are going to be increased by 5%, is it? Did I just read 5%? Yes.
5%.
Yeah. So which one is correct? Are they capped at $275, like let's say at $275 per hour, or are they going to be asking for an increase every year after the first year?
So thank you for noticing that. So the matrix on page 5 is it's a snapshot of what they are currently asking for, just as a way to give us a baseline to compare to the rest of the proposals. But you are correct that they would be increasing it by 5% each year. If I may, if there are additional questions, we also have Brian Everett. He's the CEO of Overland Pacific and Cutler, and he's available to answer any questions as well.
Well, what I'd like to know is, can we eliminate that from the contract and just do a cap of $150,000? Because we're taking on the most expensive company, and then they're asking for 5% every year thereafter, and I think we have to kind of...
The cap would remain at $150,000, whether they have a 5% increase within their requests.
We'd be drawing down the funds much
Quicker.
faster.
Absolutely.
And they are the most expensive. So I'd just like to see that paragraph eliminated if we're going to approve this contract.
Mr. Mayor. I just wonder, Overland Pacific and Cutler Inc. is the most expensive one. Why we are taking the most expensive one among 7 people? They came forward, 7 companies, and 4 you guys are mentioned here. They're not bad. But then at the end, we pick up the most expensive one.
Thank you, Council Member. So you are correct. They are the most expensive one. And one of the reasons in the review of each of the proposals we found for OPC is that they are a full-service firm. So if you were to look at the other proposals, and I know that you have just Epic Land Solutions, for example, to compare. So OPC offers in-house appraisals, in-house civil engineer, in-house property management services, and in-house property acquisition services. So each of those are necessary for the type of contract that we have. So that really was the ultimate reason, is that they have a full service of offerings for us, and they would be able to respond quickly when we needed them for our sometimes impromptu requests. However, I should note that each of the proposals that we received, each of the companies were qualified, and it was a very close race. As we look at Epic Land Solutions, for example, they're another firm that has almost as comprehensive offerings as OPC. They do not have the in-house civil engineer, for example, but it is a comparable service. So in the review panel, we decided on OPC based on the past experience, the project list, and then the full service offerings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sinani.
So OPC has been the contractor on these services for the last 10 years.
Yes, sir. Back in 2007, we ended up approving this contract with OPC. At that time, there was a need to try to consolidate the services and to have one point that the city staff would serve as that point of contact and be able to funnel out the different requests that we got from Public Works, for example, or community parks and services. So to answer your question, yes, it has been 10 years with OPC.
So the previous contract, which will expire on October 1st, 2017, was for an amount not to exceed $150,000, correct?
That is correct.
Did they exceed the $150,000?
We have 2 separate bills right now for appraisal services that may push them over that $150,000 by about $12,000.
But for the period before October 1st?
For the
So
period
these are
before
in-
October 1st, no, sir. It's the $150,000.
See, that immediately catches my attention. We talked about this like a month or 2 months ago. We approved these contracts not to exceed amounts, sometimes with a contingency amount attached to it, and somehow miraculously the services always end up being like to the last penny. The full amount of the contract. Why is it so? Why is it so? Why do I never see a contract that expires, the period of the contract expires, and actually there's cash left over? I'm still waiting to see one of those come in front of us. And now I'm being told that this contract on October 1st will expire with the complete $150,000 expended.
That is correct.
You know what?
I think, if I may, we do our best to anticipate the projects that will come online, and
We're like jewelers. We're what do
If I may, the only thing I'd say is that when contracts are nearing their either their expiration or they're running their cap. That's why they come to council, because they have to. They need that additional authorization. So there are many other contracts that will just expire within their terms under budget, and they don't come to you because the staff doesn't need to come and ask for additional authority. So
I'm still waiting to see one. Like from if to the extent there are contracts that the period expires and there's cash left over, I think it would be very rewarding, psychologically very positive for all of us to actually hear about these. Like, just include that as an item in the agenda. Just say, this contract, by the way, just expired. We still have $25,000 left on it. I'm bringing that as an example. In 4.5 years on council, I haven't heard of a single one of those, and that's worrisome. So, and again, the fact that we're going with the same entity again, that has been providing the service for the last 10 years. I could go back and ask and say, has for any of the periods that have been included in the 10-year period, so from 2007 to 2014. No, I'm sorry. 2007 through 2010, it was $150,000. Was there any money left over? From 2010 to 2014, our staff report doesn't indicate what the additional amount was. Was there any money that was left over? And clearly, from 2014 to 2017, we're saying that nothing's left over. There's no money that's not expended. So there, just.
The other piece I just want to reiterate as it relates to what Ms. McLean stated earlier, this was a very close tie, really, between the two firms as it relates to Overland as well as Epic. And we had 3 individuals from staff who were on the committee to review all of the RFPs that came through. And if it's council's desire to possibly change courses as it relates to having experience with another firm, our alternative, too, is to go and swap it around and have Epic provide those services to see if there's a flavor for that. And Epic would provide those services, and we would then have Overland as the backup, if I remember correctly. And so that is also an option that's before council if you so choose to move down that path.
No, comment. I'd rather see us, if you say that they're equal or it was very close, I'd rather see us go with the less expensive firm and then and see how that works out rather than go with the more expensive or the most expensive and then have extra additional requests for funds, a higher cap the next year and then the next year, and before we know it, our $150,000 will be gone. So at least this way, if we take one that's a little bit less expensive, which you say is pretty much the same, that $150,000 may last a little bit longer, and maybe we won't reach that cap. But that would be my preference at this point.
Okay. I have a couple of questions because I want to know what is the role. Sorry, I want to see what is the role of the OPC or anybody who gets this contract. It says property acquisition services includes preparing appraisals, preparation of offer letters, negotiation, reporting for formal approval, escrow settlement, preeminent domain activities and coordination, tenant relocation, property disposition and right-of-way services. I mean, tenant relocation. These are the services that they will provide? Is that what?
So the information that you just read was the language that we included in the request for proposals. But I would say that the majority of the services that we would use for the property acquisition is on appraisals. As you know, we've seen an increased need for a number of appraisals on a variety of types of projects, from Rockhaven to the Central Park. And that's something that we anticipate is going to continue to increase. Now, on the property management side, that's something that we don't anticipate is going to change much. There are a few properties that the city owns. There are some successor agency sites as well. So we expect that the property management side will maintain at a steady level.
Can you tell me which properties are they managing for us?
Yes, so the Alex Theater, for example, they're not managing that, but part of the contract is that we are responsible, the city is responsible for the exterior, any exterior damage that may occur. So as an example, we had an instance that happened last year with the rain, and there was an exterior crack. We needed a civil engineer to go out there to assess the damage, to determine what would be needed to rectify this crack and whether there was some sort of significant structural damage. I apologize for the long explanation. We also have the Maryland garages, the Maryland retail units, and then 116 West California and 250 North Orange. And then for the community services and parks, we have the location of the Verdugo Job Center, the 1255 South Central Avenue.
Okay. My understanding where all our garages are managed by a company and they take care of A to Z for the management fee that they pay them, and that's a hefty management fee we pay. I like to add that I looked at some of the numbers. It's not in our on the agenda today. That's something else that you need to talk about. I mean, it says the Armenian American Museum and Cultural Center negotiations and Central Park Master Plan process. I don't know. Are they in these negotiations at this time?
No, sir. They're not in the negotiations. We're speaking to the appraisal services.
So they are the ones who provide the appraisal services?
Yes.
Or they hire a company to conduct the appraisal, to do the appraisal for us?
So OPC has both. They have both an in-house MAI appraised certified appraiser, and they also have a list of some sub-consultants as well. So we know that there is a need at times to get differing opinions, so they do have access to the sub-consultants. The same would be true for EPIC as well. They have an in-house team, and then they also have a list of consultants that they can utilize as well.
And the fees for the appraisals, are they included in that $150,000 or we pay separately?
Those are included in the $150,000.
It's included in the $150,000?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And complete phase 2 of tech initiative. I mean, what kind of a company is OPC or EPIC? What kind of a company are they? Are they attorneys? Do they have attorneys? Are they a real estate company, full service? That they have engineering built into their, what kind of, because these are really different kinds of services that they're providing. I mean, from the Armenian American Museum to the 134 CAP to phase 2 of tech initiative, Maryland Paseo, lease extension for new location for, I mean.
If I can add something, it's also one of the items is complete business and funding plan related to Space 134. If I remember correctly, the last council meeting that discussed the RFP for something related to the 134, if I remember correctly again, I voted against it, but the rest voted for it. But of the 4, I think 3 basically said that they don't believe the 134 project is a realistic project that's ever going to come to fruition. So to the extent that potentially tens of thousands of dollars of our taxpayers' monies are going to be spent on something related to the 134, Space 134, I have a problem with that. I can't support that. I can't support that contract.
So what you're each referring to is...
And again, if you can give me 1 second, Ms. McLean. And fully understanding that council may have differing thoughts and opinions about some of these projects, if the council so desires for us not to move forward with some of these items, that could definitely be noted, and we wouldn't move forward with any expenditures as it relates to that particular item. As you know, on the 134 CAP, we are out for an RFP at this time only. And so, based on services that may be needed from Overland or whoever it is that council may ultimately move on, if there is no desire to move on any of these items, we can most definitely take that off the list and not expend any of the monies. And so, I wouldn't think of it as just one item under this umbrella. They do provide us a service that we can't do internally within the city of Glendale, and we have to work with a vendor to be able to provide us with those services. And so whether it's Overland or, again, another alternative, whatever is the comfort of the council.
Ms. Beers, but that approach is problematic because then I would have to ask you to estimate how much
Sure.
of the $150,000 worth of estimated services will actually go towards complete business and funding plan related to Space 134. Are you prepared to give me an answer
No.
on that? I
Right,
thought
but
so.
we have a cap of the $150,000 for 3 years.
But we just talked about the fact that when contract expires, usually that amount is fully gone. So then you have that problem. It's not to exceed, but we always seem to come to the very edge of that amount. And in the absence of any precedent of money actually being left over at the end of the expiration of the contract, I treat it as, the amount that's approved is the amount that's going to be gone.
Go ahead and let me just. We didn't let her to answer the 500 questions that I threw at her. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I did want to offer some clarity. So, Mayor Garpetian and Councilmember Sinanian, so you're each referring to a set of goals, and these goals, and I included them, I thought to help offer some clarity. I realize I've confused you now, and I apologize for that. But these were part of some strategic goals that economic development had at the start of the year to really guide our efforts. And this is really just used an example to show that some of these things have direct associations with potential services that we would have with whomever we choose for property services and property acquisition. Now, one of those items related to the phase 2 of the Tech Initiative and Accelerator program. The reason that's in there is it could be possible that we may need space for a future accelerator. So should we need that, then we may need the services from OPC. So I apologize for all the clauses there. And at the time of writing this, I think Space 134 was a little bit more on the forefront. Since then, we've realized that that may not be the priority for this time. But it's still been something that, should we decide at a later date that we may need to revisit that over the 3 years, that we could possibly use services for those.
And if I can just add to that, as the report explains, the property agent is not just for economic development; it's for any department that needs that service. So it could be housing. So if housing ever, and so as Jennifer mentioned, the list is probably under-inclusive by a lot, because it could be any city department that needs to use those services. For example, if housing ever wanted to look at a particular property agent for property agent services to acquire a building that would have both right-of-way acquisition, relocation, whatever, those are the types of services that you.
And honestly, I realize that, and I think that is the case, because yes, housing issues.
Yeah.
If we were to deal with an acquisition of a building, it's going to involve services that they have to provide. But then the question is, well, how do you estimate this $150,000 not to exceed amount? If this is an under-inclusive list or an over-inclusive list, somehow the $150,000 amount has to be related to a list, to an estimate of the amount and type of services that they're going to provide.
I suspect it's based on the list, but also past experience.
Past experience since 2007, I would say, at least in terms of having a comprehensive program in place. Now, like you said, Mr. Sinanian, could it be more or less? Sure, absolutely. But it's our best estimate based on what we've known from the past and looking to the future as it relates to what
brings
we
me
have.
back to my initial point. Well, how is it that our best estimates, which are only estimates, end up being exactly the amount of money that we end up spending during that contract period? Something's not right.
And that's a tough question at times to answer, but I think the best one that I can say is staff does their best to estimate according to the project at hand. And it's based on experience that we have within each of our departments to be able to put a cost estimate forward, whether it's an engineer's cost estimate or if it's a contractual obligation. And so staff does their best to do their due diligence to give you the best estimate. Do we come close to that or at that number? Oftentimes, yes. Are we at times under that amount? Yes. I don't have all of those numbers at hand to be able to say what percentage they are, but I know where I hear where you're coming from.
So, Jenny.
The staff sent the RFP to 35 individuals representing, this is page 3, the last paragraph on page 3, potential firms, property management companies, and business, Glendale Chamber of Commerce, the Armenian Chamber of Commerce, which I don't think they are in existence now, but however, the Valley Economic Alliance, and Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation. But I thought maybe to go to real estate, what's the Board of Real Estate?
QAR?
Glendale Realtors?
Glendale Association of Realtors?
Yes, Glendale Association of Realtors also will not be bad for the future. I'm saying that whether it will be 3 years later. What I want to offer now is I think we have to move forward. We spend too much time on $50,000 a year. It's great. We have to be thrifty and efficient. But let's move forward. Now the question is whether we want to pick up Overland Pacific and Cutler, Inc., because the services, in my opinion, is needed, or we want to take Epic Land, which appears, at least on the face of it, is a cheaper proposition than OPC.
I have a couple of more questions before we make a motion, if you will. I think that the need for services is kind of questionable for me sometimes. In the last 3 years, there were 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 appraisals done. And then it's property management services, Alex Theater, which is managed by Glendale Arts, Maryland Garages, which is managed by a third party, Maryland Retail Units, I don't know, it's been vacant for at least a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken. Which one is 116? Oh, West California, and that little offices that we have, that Alex...
That's right, the Glendale Arts.
Glendale Arts leased from us.
That's right.
I mean, management services for these, I mean, I don't know what is the need. And also negotiations on the development of Rock Haven. My understanding was the Economic Development Agency, with the museum, the same thing. You do all the negotiations, bring it to the council makes a decision, and our legal team, they do the contracts. And I don't know where, not just this company, I don't know where is the role of the another third party company to come in and do what? And also the Central Park Master Plan process. We already hired a third party consulting company to do the master plan. I just don't understand the need of another company to generate right-of-way acquisition requests. I know sometimes GWP has those requests, or Public Works has this request. Tyler report for Rock Haven. I mean, what is a Tyler report? I mean, we don't need a third-party company to pull a Tyler report. It's just, I just want to understand what is this contract overall for, because most of the things you can do it on a staff level.
Mayor Garpetian, those are the only things that we do need to farm out, which is doing an appraisal for us and those title reports. Those are not things that can be done in-house. And a lot of times with our negotiations, those are very vital to moving to the next step. How do we know how much a property is worth? We need to get an MAI certified appraisal to find that out. And so whether it's OPC or another company, we do need that appraisal service for those parts of the negotiation. So
sure, I understand that. I understand that you need.
And then the property maintenance, if I can, we have tenants at those properties, and that I in working with the different tenants and tenants need, that is really a very specific job that you need someone to, when you're working through tenant and any issues those tenants may have. So that is probably not a large portion of that contract. Again, we kept it at the 150, understanding this is what we have paid through the years. We have gone to a point where I think it's gone over because we have more issues related to asset management. 10 years ago, asset management with our parking lots, with Rock Haven, with our different assets, wasn't something we were actively doing. But over the last 4 years, I'd say asset management and how we're managing those has been vital. So knowing the background and the title reports related to that, knowing how much those properties are worth, have been instrumental in getting the asset management portion of economic development to this point.
Look, I understand. The appraisal report, like, to be honest with you, I wasn't very unhappy with the appraisal, the way the appraisal was done on Civic Auditorium, and you know that. And I don't want to be the dead horse right now, but the way it was conducted. I mean, we should always try to overvalue our assets instead of downgrading them. But I understand we need. But if you need an appraisal report on a property, you can call 5 companies and get a bid and get an appraisal.
Correct, sir.
I'm not questioning the amount of $50,000 a year. I'm questioning the need for the services. A title report, you call any title company and say, I need a title report on this property. They charge you, I don't know, $2,000, $3,000 and send it to you. And there's no difference who calls that. I mean, who makes that call?
You're right, sir. I guess the difference is having someone under contract to be able to be timely about that. If we have to go through an RFP process for different amounts, having a company that can do these, that we can have under contract, makes that process much faster. As you know, appraisals can take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. If I add time on top of that to secure a vendor for that, it's a time saver in that regard.
No, I get it.
And that is the big, I think, piece of this is the time aspect of it. So if we were to have to go out and get a bid through our purchasing administrator for times that appraisals were needed and or title was needed, we could do that through our purchasing department and have them done every time we needed it. However, there would be some time that would be added to that, probably 2 to 3 weeks at a minimum would be added to a process versus having a contract in place with a not to exceed amount that would give us the opportunity to go to that company and have them do the work for us. Again,
Right,
it's council's pleasure as it relates to how you want to go about it, but those are our options.
I understand. I just want to emphasize on that point that we had 3 or 4 appraisals done in 3 years, and it's not that we have it every month, that it's a service that is needed on demand basis. Civic Auditorium, or what was the other ones, Rock Haven. We've been sitting on Rock Haven for 10 years now, and it's not and the management part, I'm having some sort of unease on this thing, because there is no retail. We have 3 retail spaces, and just putting all this together, it's a very small amount of work that's being done in 3 years.
Part of it, sir, will also be related to relocation efforts. As you know, we have some existing tenants and tenant obligations as landlords.
In which location?
It's the successor agency properties. It's something that's going to be dissolved as part of the Dissolution Act. And we're very sensitive to relocation of our tenants. And so when that happens, we, again, wanted to make sure that we had a professional in place that understands all of those rules related to relocation. So that would be a service, again, that we would go out.
That would be those would be legal services. We have our city attorney's office.
If I may, members of council, so the relocation is required by law, but this is one of the specialties that these firms provide, and especially if the larger the building or the amount of tenants being relocated, the harder it is to get folks on board quickly to make those things happen. There's a lot of statutory notices that have to go out.
So,
there's a lot of procedure.
So, Mr. Garcia, as you sit here now, you're telling me that hopefully when we start the 5th and Sonora project and we have to relocate some of the residents there, let's say if this contract passes, there's not going to be another outside law firm that's going to be hired to help with the relocation.
It wouldn't be a law firm, no. I would imagine it'd be.
No. Okay. All right.
Yeah. The only if there was some lawsuit that arose from it, then we would try to handle it. But again, that's just part of the process. And again, to emphasize Ms. Beer's point, I mean, we're a big ship and it's hard to turn. And so going out and just hiring a title company or hiring an appraiser on the spot is not that easy. It's why most agencies will have this service on retainer. It's almost like a retainer agreement. You have somebody there, then when you need to do these things, you need to move quickly. We had another appraisal on another project that I can't discuss, but we had to move quickly on it. And so it was essential that we had this type of firm basically on hand to go and do that in a very quick manner.
I understand that, and when you say on demand basis, I understand that as well. But having like 3 or 4 appraisers and this property management on Alex Theater, which is managed by a third party, Maryland Garages, which we pay about $3 million a year to be managed, Maryland Retail Units, which are 3 units. So all of this cost us $150,000 in the last 3 years. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Okay, so I think we need to revisit the on-demand aspect of this thing, because this should not have cost us half that amount with the appraisals that was done and the management that was done. Sending an engineer to Alex Theater to see if the crack on the wall is a structural one or not. I understand. Okay. Any more questions? Thank you, Ms. McLean.
In all fairness to Overland, I did check on Epic, and they have a 2% adjustment for the 2 years. So again, I think the concept, this is a necessary investment. It's $150,000 for services. So I'd like to see us go ahead with this, but I would suggest that we take Epic Land Solutions, which is less expensive, a smaller percentage of an adjustment, and perhaps we'll get more. Maybe we won't reach that $150,000 cap. So that would be my motion.
Okay. Before we take a vote, I have one more question, Jennifer, if I may. Has this been the RFP? Did you send this RFP to Glendale Association of Realtors as well?
I did not send it to the Glendale Association of Realtors. I did send it to the Building Owners Management Association, who then sent this out to many of the property managers throughout Glendale.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there's a motion on the...
There is two parts to this offer. One is for 150 and the other part for Epic was 25. So are we switching if based on her motion? Because there's two parts of it. The first was OPC for $150,000 and Epic would provide another $25,000 services. So are we switching that? What we're doing?
That's another question, because if OPC is providing the appraisal services, what is that $20,000 for?
$25,000.
I think it was for redundancy. It was to have a backup.
So over the past few years, we've understood the importance of having two separate opinions for these appraisals. So one of the reasons that we were opting to have a second firm on hand is in the event that we needed a second opinion. So that was the intent of having Epic Land Solutions.
Okay.
And since my objection is not so much as to the entity that is going to prevail on the contract, as it is as to the process and the sort of the uncertainty of the type of services that are going to be provided, the fact that it's an estimate, yet every time we are exactly on the edge of the estimate, I'm just not going to support it, whether it's Epic or Overland, because Overland's a reputable company. They're a major presence in this area. It's not the issue. The issue is how does this? I'm waiting for an explanation why every time the contracts end up getting to the edge of the not to exceed amount. Why is it that we never come under? And everyone just raised all kinds of issues as to what services are necessary, what aren't necessary, and how that estimate, whether that estimate is based on solid suppositions. So,
can we, Ms. Beers, can we postpone this item to have some discussions?
We absolutely can. If that's the pleasure of the council, we can postpone it.
Have some more clarity as to.
I'll move to postpone this item for a 2-week period. Is that enough time for staff to?
Sure.
Okay.
And this contract is up October 1st?
In October.
Yes.
In October? Okay.
Yes.
So we can come back and revisit. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a motion and a second.
So,
Roll call,
Mr.
please.
Mayor, there was a previous motion, but we'll consider that motion dead for lack of a
Amendment
second.
motion.
And
Substitute
or
motion.
substitute motion. And it will be seconded by Councilmember Agajanian.
Roll call,
Councilmember
please.
Agajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian, Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is City Council and staff comments.
Comments?
Yes.
Sure.
May I start?
Yes, Mr. Councilmember Sinani.
Last Tuesday, last Saturday, Glendale held its second annual open air music and arts festival, which was a great success. In a great contrast to the first one, which was not much of a success because the turnout was low. I attribute that to the location of the festival and also obviously the experience that was gained during the first year. This year the festival was held on Brand Boulevard in downtown Glendale. Last year was held at the Central Park and the turnout was really, really low. But I hope folks turned out to listen to live music and have some good food and spend good time in downtown Glendale. I think the next one will be even better. And it's a good tradition that we've established. Also, on Tuesday, it wasn't in Glendale, but nevertheless, a lot of the Glendale officials, including our mayor, were involved. Our senator was there. The Korean community was holding its annual Korean Culture Festival in La Cañada in one of their parks. Again, it was a great turnout, and a lot of Glendale officials and Korean cultural associations that are part of our Glendale fabric were present. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinani. Mr. Agajanian.
Last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, me and Ms. DeWine, we went to Sacramento. I was the voting delegate to participate in two resolutions with the League of California Cities were entertaining. And one of them is very important that I read. The resolution was a resolution of the League of California Cities calling upon the governor and legislator to enter into discussion with League and other public safety stakeholders to identify and implement strategies that will relieve the unintended negative impact of existing criminal law. And as you may know, recent years there were different propositions, such as AB 109 that the League of California Cities were very worried that passed, of course, that AB 109 transferred nearly 45,000 felons from the state prison system to local jail facilities, which are not designed to house criminals on a long-term basis and were unprepared for such an increase. Proposition 47, the Safe Neighborhood and the Schools Act, which downgraded a number of serious crimes from felonies to misdemeanor, such as drug possession, repeated shoplifting, forging checks, gun theft, and possession of drugs. And then this continues. Of course, it was not just those. Proposition 57, which categorized rape by intoxication, rape of unconscious person, human trafficking involving sex with minors, drive-by shooting, assault with a deadly weapon, domestic violence, hate crime causing physical injury and corporal injury to a child as nonviolent felonies. So it was reduced by Proposition 57 and permits offenders convicted of violating such laws to avoid appropriate prison sentence. And under Proposition 57, criminals who commit multiple crimes against multiple victims will be eligible for release at the same time as offenders who only committed a single crime against a single victim, and repeat criminals are eligible for release after the same period of incarceration as first-time offenders. So these were the issues that they voted to bring to governors and also legislators to be aware of it. The second resolution was that to have the definition of local control to be determined emergency services by local people, because we pay the taxes, so we want to have the control over it rather than legislators to have the control. Beside that, I voted, of course, in favor of mentioning to governor and the legislators these two resolutions, and it passed with unanimous consent. And they voted positively for those two issues. I just also want to mention that the last 3 days of, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday was last day of session because legislators, they left Sacramento on September 15th, and they will come back January 3rd. And all those resolutions which the House and Senate were passing sent to governor for his signature, which he has time until October 15th. I just want to mention SB 2, permanent housing funding, which they were entertaining. I was there, Ms. Devine were there too, and this is like from now on, if governor signs, will be fees of $75 to $225, which on every transaction they have, anybody has, except of buying a house or commercial property, any land transaction, there will be fee of $75 to $225, so which will generate $250 million per year for affordable housing. SB 3 is a bond measure for $3 billion for housing for low-income group or residents, and $1 billion bond for veterans. So that's SB 3. There's SB 35, which these are, the governor promised these three will sign. It's planning and zoning affordable housing, streamlined, approved process. So the cities cannot stop those affordable housing when they come to fruition. They cannot ask for, very detailed EIR. So these are the three issues which governor said he will sign. There is two other issues or resolutions that governor has to sign. One has to do with primary election. By 2020, California will move primary election from June to March 3rd of 2020. This is very important because California will be the fifth state that primary election will be held. So I just want to bring an example. In 2008, of course, this is not the first time California is trying to move the primary election. And in February 2008, California moved the primary election again from June to February. And 2.4 million more people participated in election than 2004. And at that time, of course, Hillary Clinton won, and President Obama did not win in California. But however, the more, of course, in 1996, also California moved the primary from June to March of that year, but unfortunately it was end of the March. So that's why this time it's March 3rd, which is the first Tuesday of March. At that time, we were 27th. Still, by the time it got to California, nobody cared because already we had the candidates. So I just want to add also that that the problem is that there one more issue, of course, I want to mention is tax returns. They have decided that in 2020, if any candidates come forward to be a candidate in California, they have to present their tax returns to the public. Of course, it doesn't say Trump, but obviously it's directed to Donald Trump. But I don't know if governor will sign this, because in 2012 and 2016, while he was candidate for governor of California, he did not provide his tax returns to public. So I will see if it will pass. The last thing I want to say is SB 179, which brought by Senator Tony Atkins, and that will recognize non-binary category in addition to when you go to DMV and other places. So we have to have now male, female, and non-binary. So that's another issue in front of governor to sign. And that's my report from going to League of California Cities. And thank you for
indulging you. Thank you, Mr.
letting me
Giving
to sign, to vote for on this, some of the issues about the League and listen to them.
Thank you, Mr. And thank you for going to Sacramento. I know it takes a lot of time and away from the business and family, so we appreciate both of my colleagues being in Sacramento and representing Glendale. Thank you. Ms. Devine.
Yes, I just wanted to say that going to that conference gives us an opportunity to meet other elected officials and city administrators from all over the state to exchange ideas, see what they're all doing. It gives us an insight into what's going on in the rest of the state. We also attended some conferences, workshops while we were there. Most of them, I think, very important to our city and to every city, because we all, in the end, have the same problems. Every single city has the same issues as Glendale. So we attended workshops on CalPERS, streamlining of CEQA, the implementation of Prop 64, the marijuana initiative, and a ballot measure, and all of its related issues. And believe me, there are a lot. I came away from the conference knowing, my idea of Glendale being reinforced, the fact that we are on the right path. No city is perfect, but we are absolutely doing and enacting policy that is at the forefront of our state. And so I was really proud of that, and was glad to have attended for all of you. I also attended the Korean Cultural Festival, and the Armenian American Council hosted an Armenian festival, and it was a weekend where those of us that live here in Glendale can enjoy the diversity of our city. It was just so enjoyable to see all of them, hear the music, see the dancing, taste the food of the different cultures that we have in our community, and to celebrate all of them. The Arts and Music Festival was fantastic. It is always good to see families and kids out enjoying art and painting and coloring and doing all of those fun things that just make them well-rounded little people. And finally, at the Armenian Festival, I was asked to announce that the Armenian Council of America is going to hold a volunteer lawyers program. It is free legal advice to anyone. It will be held on Saturday, October the 14th, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the Glendale office of the Armenian Council of America, which is on 815 East Colorado. So if you're interested in going, bring your important papers with you, and if you have questions, you can call them or email them at the info@armeniancouncil.org. So attorneys are going to be available for brief advice and referrals. So I think that would be a good opportunity. That's October 14th, free legal advice, 2 to 5, at the Armenian Council of America. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. Thank you very much. I have a couple of quick items. I want to ask Ms. Beers to bring us a legislative update. Since our colleagues within Sacramento, there are a few bills that's out there, which is very important to local control. SB 540, SB 35, as was mentioned by Councilmember Ajanian and also Councilmember Devine. SB 2, they're very important for for our smaller cities that we met our RENA requirements, but still there are bills out there that we need to work on. Also, there is a bill floating around to reduce the limits on FHA, and that's something that we need to get involved in. It's a huge issue for every municipality. Also, speaking of legislations, I'm happy to announce that our former colleague and current Assembly member Laura Friedman was successful in securing $20 million for construction of the Garden Bridge. And these funds are part of a Senate Bill 5, and which has passed both the Senate and the Assembly. If government signs it into the law, signs the bill, and bond measures will be on the next year's ballot for voters to vote on. And this is basically 80% of the construction cost. The portion will be covered by the LA County Metro, thanks to Councilmember Najarian's efforts. I think we're going to get that, the rest of the funding.
If I can add, the Senate bill is co-authored by two senators. One of them our Senator Anthony Portantino.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Sinani. I also attended the Open Art and Music Festival, and that was a great event. Councilmember Sinani was right. The first year was not, it takes time to get this thing put together and get it advertised and bring people. But Grand Boulevard has that charisma. It brings people out. And I'm very happy that it was a great, successful event. And kudos to Glendale Arts and their crew and everybody who was involved from the city. Economic development was there. They had this beer garden that was very, very famous and very popular. I don't drink, but I heard that the beer garden was one of the highlights of the thing. Korean Cultural Festival, also the celebration of the Armenian Independence Days. I've attended both of them, and these are the type of events that brings the community out, and we learn and appreciate each other's culture and tradition. I think it's a great thing to do. So with that, I'm going to stop and ask our city clerk and see what's next on the agenda.
Next on the agenda is community event announcements, including the 3-minute public comment portion.
Okay, I have several cards. Matt Ganji, followed by Armen Kalafian.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, staff, everyone in the audience and watching at home. I'm Matthew Ganji. I'm the president of Glendale Beautiful, and I'm joined with...
Yes, and I'm Sharon Weissman from Far North Glendale with Glendale Beautiful.
And Sharon made this great flyer here that she's...
Roberta made it.
Oh, Roberta made it, I'm sorry. But that we have. So we're here to invite you on Friday, September 22nd. We're having an event at the Casa Adobe. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. And this year for our fall event, we're going to be awarding sustainable houses with sustainable landscaping. And our board this year voted to extend our charter beyond just awarding commercial landscaping properties to also award sustainable landscaping in houses and in schools. So for the fall event, we're going to be awarding sustainable houses. And so, yeah, I hope everyone can come out and enjoy the event. There will be snacks and refreshments. It should be really great. And it's just a really positive thing, I think, as well, because it's a little bit more sensitive with private homes. Myself and our board member, Mary Jane, went to the different houses, and we sent letters to make sure that people wanted to be, that their house would be awarded. And some people we spoke to were so excited, like, one fellow said, I just ripped up my grass and I just put this in and I'm already using less water and you're here to award that. Can I bring my friends and some neighbors? So hopefully these things will be encouraged and hopefully we'll go more sustainable because that's beautiful. So I hope you can make it to Glendale Beautiful's event on Friday at the Casa Adobe, again, 6 to 8, and hope everyone can make it out.
And for your convenience, we've included a membership form on the back of the invitation. So we love you all to send that in too. So we hope to see you Friday night.
How much is the...
It's $10 a year, very affordable.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Weisman. So, okay. Thank you. Next speaker is Armen Kalafian.
Good evening, Mayor Barton, Karapetian, City Council members, City staff. My name is Armen Kalafian, and I'm from Coffee Cube, located here in Glendale. I'm the powerful force who stands with confidence and determination to create a life full of happiness, health, and profound success while positively impacting people's lives. So this is my mantra. A few years ago, I experienced a major trauma. The experience changed my life, and I realized who I am and why I'm here. I'm here to create and positively transform people's lives. While going through this hardship, I kept my head up, joined Rotary Club of Glendale and other fraternal organizations, and gave back to the community. Being part of these organizations, I realized that there are a lot of people in Glendale that give back to the community. But there are also people out there that need help. I don't know if you knew that there are homeless kids in Glendale who are part of GUSD and who also have no refrigerator or have no bed to sleep on. So this is who we are. A Coffee Cube is created with the intention of providing a unique experience to its customers by providing not only delicious coffee, snacks, and daily inspirations, but also the opportunity for everyone to join the Coffee Cube movement. Coffee Cube's mission is to brew a social movement and transform lives one cup at a time while inspiring others to do the same. Our intention is to give back 5% of our proceeds to every community that we're located in. Since we're starting in Glendale, Coffee Cube's intention is to identified Glendale Healthy Start to be its first beneficiary. And it's Glendale Healthy Start is part of GUSD. So on our first location will be, our first location will be launched end of this year. Before our launch, we want it to be an example to our future customers and give back. We will take 25 GAC kids to a Dodgers game and show them a good time. And I'll have Mel talk about the project in detail.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and city staff. My name is Melina.
Go ahead.
My name is...
After you're done, please fill out the speaker's card.
Oh, sure. Okay. My name is Melina Sardar from Sardar Coaching and Consulting, and Coffee Cube is one of my clients that I'm consulting for. When I met Armen Kalafian over a year ago, he started talking about his business and the vision that he had not only to create a unique coffee business, but also his passion of wanting to create new opportunities for the community and give back to the youth and families in our community. And is actually what inspired me to get involved with this business because of my background in doing a lot of youth development in the community. Before its actual launch, like Armen mentioned, we're going to be we've purchased 45 Dodger tickets and are taking 25 GUSD students this Friday to a Dodgers game. They're going to receive a Dodgers t-shirt, transportation to the game, and a $20 food voucher, and join on an evening of inspirational fun. Joining the students will be a few of the school administrators and the Coffee Cube executive team. And we're having a reception event at the Glendale Unified School District offices on Friday, and we'd love to see you all there. It's going to be at 4 o'clock, where we're going to be doing a presentation to the students and their parents, and then we're going to hop on the bus and head to the Dodgers game. And I just found out from Armen that we have 2 tickets actually available. If any of you want to hop on the bus with us and join the Dodgers game, you're welcome. Paula?
Where's Dan Bell? Where's Dan Bell?
in the back. Dan Bell's in the back.
2 free tickets for you, Dan.
We'll note that. So just wanted to mention that, and hope that you can come to the reception on Friday at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just have a question. Is Coffee Cube non-profit organization or is it a business?
No, it's a private business.
Private business.
What's your location?
The first one is going to be on a trailer. We're going to be around.
Oh.
And then the locations will be identified later. Okay. These are freestanding, self-sustaining pods that provide all this stuff. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Well, thank you very much for doing this. Very good.
Thank you. Next speaker is Silva Savlian, followed by Vartan Minasian.
Good evening. Thank you for for allowing me to speak. My name is Silva Sevlian. I'm an associate director at the USC Institute of Armenian Studies, and I'm here to share an event called Innovate Armenia, which is in its third year. And it's this Saturday, September 23rd, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., free and open to the public. We are featuring innovative speakers, innovative music, and innovative food, including food from Mini Kebab, which is in Glendale. We're going to have kebab burritos, and guests will hear the Ignatius brothers speak. One brother is the editor of the Harvard Business Review. The other is a columnist for the Washington Post. We will have a professor from GCC, JPL's Richard Ohanian, as well as other scientists and NGOs from Armenia. This is an opportunity for the Armenian diaspora to learn more about Armenian NGOs and vice versa, but it's definitely not an event that is just for Armenians. We talk about a lot of global issues, and we hope your constituents will join us.
Thank you.
Sounds fascinating.
Next speaker is Vartan Minasyan.
While he's walking up, did she say it was Saturday from 10 to 6 p.m.?
Yes.
All right, thank you. September 20th.
Hello, Mayor, council members, and city staff. My name is Vartan Chris Minasyan. I was born and raised in the city of Glendale. I attended Mark Keppel Elementary School, Toll Middle School, Hoover High School, and Glendale Community College. I'm raising my 15-year-old daughter and 13-year-old son in Glendale. What brings me in front of you today is I'm very concerned about the confusion about the production and distribution of marijuana that dispensaries partake in. I want to bring a couple things to your attention. I understand you have ordinance in place already, and most of Glendale community is happy about that, and we like to keep it that way. Marijuana growing industry is not regulated, as you all know. Marijuana growers are very irresponsible in their growing methods. Marijuana is not the same as it was 20, 30 years ago, which is where today's statistics state how harmless and natural it is. Rather, today's growers are using toxic nutrients to enhance the potency of marijuana. If you walk into hydroponic shops today, you will find those products. You will find nutrients that say on the label, warnings, highly toxic, should not be consumed, cancer-causing warnings, yet growers use as much as they feel necessary to grow strongest marijuana possible, which in return dispensaries will purchase and distribute and sell to our youth and many members of our community if it should be accessible. The smoker today is not aware of the chemicals they're smoking. They think it's natural, but it's not. It's been enhanced with chemicals that are toxic. So most smokers do not know that and aren't aware of where the plant was produced and how it was produced. If we ever allow dispensaries in Glendale, ultimately we're allowing poison to be sold to our community. Such nutrients that are used in some cases are not even legal in the United States. A lot of growers will order them online from other countries like Australia. There's some that I don't want to spend a whole lot of time going over and explaining, but it's very toxic, and we would be basically concerns about public health issues in the city of Glendale. There's a reason why it's still a Schedule I drug according to the federal government.
If you can wrap it up, please, because
Yes,
your
sure.
time is up. I'll be fair to everybody.
Sure. It's a Schedule I drug right next to crack cocaine and heroin. And Title 18 United States Code 1956 and 1957 state that money that is derived from the sale of Schedule I drugs is not legal, and once it's exchanged hands and into banks or accounts in any matter, is considered money laundering. So I can't imagine the city of Glendale ever accepting money from a dispensary.
Thank you, Mr. Minazzi.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, that's the last card that I had. Last speaker. What's next, please?
Next item on the agenda under action items is General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding California Water Fix report and resolution of support. A1 is resolution of support for the California Water Fix.
Okay, Ms. Beers.
Mr. Mayor, we'll go to Steve Zern, General Manager of Glendale Water and Power.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, tonight we have the opportunity to present to you or to make to you a presentation on the proposed California Water Fix project, and then to facilitate discussion and questions and answers that you may have. Obviously, a project that's been long in the development in various iterations. And tonight we have with us the General Manager of the Metropolitan Water District, Mr. Jeff Keitlinger, who's going to give you MWD's perspective on it. And then we're going to ask Mike DeGhetto, our Chief Assistant General Manager for Water, to come up and give you a little more of a local perspective on the project and what the impacts here are. So without further ado, let me ask Mr. Keitlinger to come up and make his presentation.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here, Mr. Mayor, council members, and our director, Director Sinanian. So thank you very much. I'm going to run through a brief PowerPoint on California Water Fix and tell you a little bit about what's going on with that. So, oh, terrific.
It's not, the thing is not in here. Fine. You can use the mouse too, Mr. Keitlinger.
Can't seem to get that to work. Does this work?
Try that.
Okay.
Wait. Go ahead. Is it on? Yeah, there you go.
Here we go. So our board is we're going to have a full day workshop on this matter, September 26th. We've had 3 workshops on it to date, and then our decision will be at our October 10th board meeting. Here's the fix of just how the money is divided up among various projects. You have the Central Valley Project, State Water Project, and you have MWD's share. MWD's share is basically a quarter of the whole project, 26%. That's what we're asking our board to do. Are you willing to vote for and support funding 26% of this project? That is what is on our agenda at that meeting. Here's a quick look at who Metropolitan is. Metropolitan is this small sliver of California that represents 6 counties. Ventura County, the southern portion of Ventura County, all of Los Angeles, all of Orange County, all of San Diego County, western portions of Riverside, San Bernardino. But that's 19 million people. 1 in every 2 Californians are crammed into this little area here. And the reason they formed Metropolitan was to band together the resources. They knew they had to build big projects, the Colorado River Aqueduct, the State Water Project. And so the 13 original cities banded together to pool their resources, and Glendale was one of those original 13 cities. You're one of the founding members of Metropolitan. Here's where Southern California gets its water. We get about 45% of our water is what we call local water. Most of that comes from our rain and then goes into our groundwater basins in the San Gabriel, San Fernando, Orange County area. But of that local water, we're also counting City of Los Angeles' Owens Valley supply, which is really not terribly local. That's coming from about 300 miles north of here. But it's their own. They don't share it. It's the City of Los Angeles. So we put that over in that category. Metropolitan supplies the rest of it. 55% of Southern California's water comes from 2 places, Northern California, about 30% of Southern California's water, and the Colorado River, 25%. Those 2 supplies make up more than half of all of Southern California's water. As a region, most people are kind of half on Met, half not, and then it varies city to city. Glendale at the moment is a little more on Metropolitan than they historically were. They've lost some groundwater supplies due to pollution. So Glendale gets about 60% of their water from Metropolitan, but also has done a very impressive job at 10% recycled water, which is our region as a whole is recycling 10%. So that's very important to our future to keep up that recycled water effort. Now, in that Northern California water, here's the water that hits the delta. Half goes out to the ocean, basically serving environmental purposes. Almost a third is used upstream by farming communities for growing primarily rice, but other crops as well, north of the delta. 4% of the water is used within the delta for farming, and 17% of it's exported. That exported water supplies 3 million acres in the Central Valley. It supplies the 19 million people here in Southern California. It supplies Silicon Valley, San Francisco, Oakland, the East Bay area. All that area also gets all their water from that delta area. Of that 17% that's exported, Metropolitan, for 19 million people, is really only taking 4% of that water. So we do a lot with that water. We managed to make it go a long way to serve half the state's population. So part of our game plan is to make sure our imported water supplies are reliable. We invest continuously in the Colorado River and our Northern California supplies. And we have 4 major risks impacting our Northern California supplies. Earthquake risk, sea level rise, climate change is pushing salt further and further into the Bay Delta area. Subsidence from decades of farming, over a century of farming, has caused many of these islands to subside. And finally, we have all sorts of issues with endangered species fish because the fishery populations have declined in the Delta. This has resulted in a lot less water being available to export. Once upon a time, back in the 1980s, the 2 projects, the state and federal projects, could export reliably, on average, close to 8 million acre feet. Right now, we're about 4.7 and shrinking even more. We expect to be down below 4 unless we do something to modernize the system, add new fish screens, add new conveyance systems. And so that's what this project is. This project is about adding some new modern infrastructure to Governor Pat Brown's old state water project that we built in the 1960s. It's 50 years old. It needs some upgrading and it needs some modernization. What they want to do is to use, in that Bay Delta area, that circle in the middle, right now we push water through the existing channel and levee system, and they want to bypass it. They want to bypass it with 2 tunnels. They'll be 150 feet below the ground. There'll be 40-foot barrel tunnels. And they're going to, with modern technology, you can do these tunnel boring machines. They're going to build these tunnels over the 40-mile span. And that water will now bypass the delta and go completely underneath it. It'll be out of sight, out of mind, and it'll enable us to pick up large amounts during storm events without interrupting how the water flows in the delta, which has caused us serious problems for fish reasons. If you look at California, how do we get our water? We typically get our water really fast. We're an incredibly volatile water state. California gets about 60% of its water in 15 days. A 15-day span is more than half of all our water. Now, when we're lucky, that is mostly snow. If it's cold enough and in the right time of year, that's snow, and then it'll melt really slowly. When we're unlucky, it's mostly rain, and we just have to grab it and store it as fast as we can. 2012, 2013 was a drought year. And yet, even in those years, you had 3 major storm events. Those blue bars, that's the water that's roaring out the Sacramento River. It's going over 100,000 cubic feet per second. It's a huge amount of water, and it's going right out to the San Francisco Bay. That green bar is how much water we were able to move. And you can see in November and December, we're pumping a reasonable amount, and then it drops at the end of December through January and February, and we're hardly pumping at all. That's because once you hit that December period, you're cut back because of endangered species fish start to migrate, and we can't hardly pump at all in the South Delta. If you had the tunnels, that grayish white line, that's what we could have moved. That's what the fish agencies say we could have moved because it doesn't interrupt them by pumping at the north of the Delta. It's the pumping at the South Delta that interrupts and causes trouble for the fish. That yellow band, then, is what you would have captured in those couple of storms. That yellow band actually would have filled the entire Diamond Valley Lake, our largest reservoir in our system in Southern California. Just being able to pump a little more in that 6-week period is huge. It would have 800,000 acre feet. That's enough for 1.5 million homes for an entire year. And that's just a small window of time. That's exactly what this project's all about. Being able to, with climate change, as water gets more volatile, be able to pick off those big storm events and move that water into our service area. This is, as we look, we're not monolithic. Each county is slightly different. These were the top 5 reasons for LA County why you do the project. Every county in Southern California is slightly different. good groundwater basins here in LA County. You want to use this high-quality state project water, which is very low salt. You want to use that to replenish our basins and get them better functioning. A big part of the program is also to do ecosystem benefits. By building the tunnels, you improve the flow patterns for the fish, but you also need to do a lot of habitat restoration. We're going to have to restore the fish species if we're ever going to have reliable water supplies. Governor's plan calls for an initial down payment of $800 million for that, as well as restoring 30,000 acres of new habitat. So everyone wants to get right to the costs. The basic cost of the program, we've costed it out 3 different methodologies, 3 different ways, where they all come in at roughly about $15 billion. Those were all done in the 2015 timeframe, so we escalated them up to 2017 dollars, and you get that $16.7 billion. The tremendous thing about Southern California is we're spreading costs. The reason why MET was formed was to spread costs across the entire region. We're 1 in every 2 Californians, 19 million people, more than 6 million households. Metropolitan's share, a little over $4.3 billion of this project, added to our member agencies' bills, and then put on the homeowners' bills. It works out somewhere between $2 to $3 a month per entire homeowner's bill. That would be the increase, about $2 to $3. A number of our member agencies have looked at what the impact would be for their city. Every city is slightly different. Los Angeles is $1.70 a month. Long Beach is $1.20. Some places in Central Basin that don't buy a lot of water from us figure their costs are going to be 40 cents more a month. So, nobody likes rate increases, but relatively, in our belief, fairly affordable when we're spreading it across our 6.2 million households. We've looked at other ways to try and recapture the same amount of water that we're losing due to all these endangered species issues. When you do California Water Fix, it works out that slightly less than $2 a month per household. If you just did it all by recycling, closer to $5 a month per household. If you did it with desalination, you get to $7 a month per household. So every other alternative that we've looked at tends to cost more. If you look at the California Water Fix and its impact, where it would cost per acre foot, it's in that $800 to $1,200 an acre foot, that blue bar. When we do seawater desalination, like the Carlsbad plant, that was $2,400 an acre foot, more than double. When we do recycled water programs, they range from $1,200 to $3,200 as we do them across Southern California. And then the capturing stormwater at the local level and trying to build that into a water system, as you can see, is $3,000 to $5,000. So all our alternatives are typically much more expensive. This is just a repeat of what we started with, what we're doing with the metropolitan share, that 26%. And summing up, we're looking at this. It's relatively cost affordable. It's insurance. But you wouldn't have Southern California but for the Colorado River Aqueduct and the State Water Project. There is no way we can support 19 million people in this region. We're doing more with recycling. We're doing more with conservation. We're doing more with groundwater cleanup. But more than half our water is coming still from 250 to 400 miles away. That's going to be the future and reality for probably a generation or two. We need to focus and continue to work on all the other efforts we have, but we also need to invest in our basic backbone infrastructure. That's what the governor's plan is, and that's what we're asking our member agencies to take a look at this. So with that completed, and I know Mike has a presentation. I don't know if you have any questions for me now, or happy to stick around and answer them later.
Okay, I have a few speaker cards. Let me go to the speakers.
We have mics. We have our city president.
We have the second part of the presentation. If we could go through that, Mike will go quickly, more the local perspective. But if you had any questions for Mr. Keitlinger,
we'll ask our questions later.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Mayor Garpetti and members of the council, my name is Michael DeGhetto, Chief AGM for Water at Glendale Water and Power. And I'm going to follow up on Mr. Keitlinger's presentation with more of a local look at it for Glendale. And just to give some background on water in Glendale. So in 1928, Glendale was one of the original 13 founding cities of MWD to bring imported water into the area. In 1968, we worked with the City of LA to do a regional reclamation plant, which eventually got built as the Lagwarp treatment plant. 1976, that plant was completed. From 92 to 2014, we've invested over $20.3 million in recycled water in Glendale. And all the way up into 2015, we drilled a new well, the Rock Haven well, in the Verdugo Basin to help improve our local supplies. And again, to look at that metropolitan map, you know, the main point on this one is Glendale's part of a larger regional system, which helps us pool our resources for these big projects to help bring that water in from so far away. And, you know, really this map talks about, like Mr. Cutley there spoke, the two sources from the State Water Project, Colorado River Aqueduct, and really Glendale's part of a larger system. This is really one large water system that we're part of. And one of the good things about being a member agency with MET and MET putting storage like Diamond Valley Lake is it helps balance. You know, if there's a surplus on State Water Project, they can balance some of that flow in Diamond Valley, and vice versa. If there's a surplus on Colorado, some water can be stored there, and it helps us get through those dry periods. And I wanted to talk about, you know, just really in Glendale where our water comes from. So we pump water in the San Fernando Basin. About 30% of our water comes from that San Fernando Basin. And that's limited because of a lawsuit that the city of Los Angeles brought against us and other pumpers in the San Fernando Valley. So technically our only ability to pump there is called a return flow credit. And it's 20% of all the water that we sell in our service area that overlays that San Fernando Valley. So we don't have any native rights. All the native rights to all the water in San Fernando Valley belongs to the city of Los Angeles. So we maximize the amount we can pump there, and we actually pump a little bit more than our credit, our return flow credit, and we have to pay they call it a physical solution cost to LA Department of Water and Power. And the reason we overpump that is because we're doing our groundwater treatment project and our groundwater cleanup project. The other basin where we can pump from is Verdugo Basin. And the issue with Verdugo Basin is just declining groundwater levels. So Glendale and Crescenta Valley Water District are the only agencies that can pump there. And we just aren't getting the same amount of precipitation to recharge that basin in Verdugo. So we're limited on the amount of water that we can pump for Verdugo. And then we get 50% share in lagwort for recycled water. And right now it's about 7% of our production. And we have a long-standing agreement with City of Pasadena. When they complete their project, we're actually going to sell recycled water to the City of Pasadena, which will help us regionally because that'll offset imports from MET as well, because they're also a MET member agency. And then, so our total amount that we need is based on what our customers need, how much they use. And that's why I have that bottom line, or that almost bottom line of 100%. So the remainder is the amount we have to get from MET, which is about 58 to 60%, depending on how much demand there is. So we're totally dependent on that supply from Metropolitan. Now, to help further the use of the recycled water, you know, we have in our master plan, we're going to have plans to take recycled water to Chevy Chase Canyon, up to the Chevy Chase Oaks, and up to Camino San Rafael to kind of finish off our system and get the recycled water to all those other areas. And then right now we're just about done with our Hoover Toll Keppel project to bring recycled water up to the schools there. And then we have one remaining project after those other projects. We call it the Glendale T just because it's shaped like a T, but it'll bring recycled water to some of the dual plumb buildings in downtown. So, you know, really the need for the water fix, it's just increased reliability, you know, fewer supply shortages like we had back during the drought in 2015. It protects the supplies from failures of the levees in the delta in case there's earthquakes. And really in MWD's planning documents, by the year 2030, there might be 3 years of shortage out of every 10 years without the water fix. So putting the water fix in place helps stabilize that supply. And like Mr. Keitlinger mentioned, putting the water fix in place will help capture those storm events and bring a lot of that water down into our service area. And one thing it also does is improve water quality. Right now, when the water flows through the delta, it picks up a lot of organics and things like that because it's taken a long path. And by going through those tunnels, it helps improve the quality. It helps make treatment of the water easier. So it has a side benefit related to that. And then it'll also help reduce the concerns about fish survival. And really, it helps complete that original project that was planned for the State Water Project in the 1960s. Originally, there was going to be a peripheral canal, and now there's the tunnels basically are serving that same function, but in a more environmentally friendly way. And the other part about this project is, and the whole State Water Project, I call it natural desalinization, and it's basically the hydrologic cycle. Sun evaporates the water off the ocean, precipitates on the mountains, and then we have a system to capture it and bring it down here and use it. So it's not artificial desalinization where you're pumping it from the ocean, putting a lot of energy into it, taking the salt out, and then pumping it up. So, the State Water, there's two projects that'll benefit from this, the Central Valley Project and the State Water Project. And like Mr. Keitlinger mentioned, it's a 26% share for Met. And I like to look at it as MWD and Glendale are really getting a $16.7 billion project at a 74% discount. Because there are other agencies and other groups that are going to be using that water and helping to pay for that as well. So it's almost like getting grant funding, but you just have other people that are helping subsidize those costs. So to put that in perspective, so the average household use in Glendale is 13.1 HCF, which is about $38 a month. But really, when you look at it on a per gallon basis, and that's why I made this graphic, it took me a lot of time to put this together, but right now our rates are 0.39 cents a gallon. So it's not 39 cents, it's not $3, it's 0.39 cents per gallon. So that's what I'm trying to show on that penny. And that's kind of a hard thing to read and a hard concept to get for me to convey. So the water fix costs really vary depending on the bond financing rates. So there's a range. So it could be between 0.022 cents per gallon and 0.034 cents per gallon on Glendale's rates, which would be about $214 to $343 per month for an average home. And that's what I'm showing there is that from 0.39 and you add another 0.034 cents to the cost per gallon. And of course, in any kind of rate increase we would do a cost of service analysis and come to council anyway. It wouldn't be automatic. There wouldn't be an automatic rate increase if that project went through. It would be part of our normal study of all of our costs.
I think another point there, it'd be easy for us to make an adjustment somewhere else to compensate for that. So when we do a cost of service analysis, it takes in everything we do, everything we purchase, and everything we spend, and our ability to shift costs or improve revenues in other places could very well negate that. I think that's.
So this could come down?
It could be nothing when it comes out in our rates study, depending on, it could come down, it could be zero, it all depends because we put everything into a single pot and then make our cost of service analysis preparation from there, which then translates into the rate schedule.
Yeah, so it's not automatic. And then just to summarize, so we have a diverse portfolio of water, but we're dependent on a reliable supply from MWD. And the California Water Fix increases MWD's water supply reliability. And the way I like to look at it is, we benefit on a $16.7 billion project at a 74% discount because there's other people that are paying for that project as well. And the cost for a household in Glendale could be between $2 and $3 per month, depending on if we do need a rate increase. And really, it completes the original plan for the State Water Project.
Okay. Any questions at this time from staff? No? Okay.
Yes.
Yes? Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Johnny.
Go to, mine is page 6, where it says 39 cents on the round. Where that 39 cents is coming from again?
It's 0.39 cents. 0.39. It's like 1/3 of a penny. That's how much it costs right now per gallon with our current rates. And I know that.
Then you say on the bottom the cost per gallon. Is that the price? 0.39.
Yeah,
cents?
0.39. It's a third.
So then on the bottom it said the cost per gallon is about 1/3 of a penny. Right. That's not 39. That's 30.
0.33. Yeah. You're right. It's a little bit more than a third of a penny. It was just hard for me to get a fraction.
It's just not because 0.39 and 1/3 of a penny are not the same. So that's.
We rounded liberally there.
Oh, that's big.
We rounded down instead of up.
That's a big circle.
And the other thing I have question about is the average cost for water is 38.6. This is without some, because we add other figures to it. I never seen somebody to have only $38 per month. Of course, one issue is that we get to every other months we get our bill. But how small should be the house to have 38?
This is just the water.
I know, but still, for a water to have 30,
so that average
should be such a small house. The average house, what was the average house that you came to this figure?
Mayor Garpetian, Councilmember Agajanian, this is just average all single-family residential water use for a year.
Understand.
So it's an average of all the houses in Glendale.
It's not the average bill. It's the average amount of water they use.
All right. So maybe a house might use more in the summer and less in the winter, but average for the year it'll be 13.1 HCFs. And that cost is just the volume-related cost, because this water fix would only affect the volume-related cost. It wouldn't affect our fixed charges.
Okay, thank
you. So there is another set of charges that go with this.
Thank you.
Just trying to compare apples to apples.
Yep. Okay. Yes. Thank you. I want to go to the speakers. Brenna Norton, followed by Jessica Salins.
I'm Jessica Salins, and I just wanted to say that I yield my 5 minutes.
You have 3 minutes, not 5 minutes.
So then I have a total of 6 minutes, is that correct? That's what I was communicated to.
Well, we usually don't do that, but I will give you 5 minutes. Go ahead and see if you can finish in 5 minutes. And
I was communicated that I could yield my time and I would have 6 minutes tonight.
Who did you communicate with?
With the city clerk and emails and meetings that if I had people, they would yield their time.
Okay, let's try to wrap it up in 5. If not, I'll give you 6, but let's try to wrap it up in 5.
Thank you. And get the clicker. All right. Good afternoon, City Council. My name is Brenna Norton. I am a community organizer with Food and Water Watch. We are a consumer watchdog nonprofit. We take zero corporate or government money so that we can be accountable to the public interest. So we are looking out for your ratepayers and taxpayers and your risk that you're taking on tonight. Met has provided this information to Glendale Water and Power, and tonight talked about why Met should raise water bills and taxes for Glendale residents. So let's be very clear. You are voting to approve a water bill and tax increase on Glendale residents tonight. As a consumer watchdog nonprofit, I am here to tell you the truth about why the hardworking families of Glendale will gain nothing from this project. Breaking news. I'm amazed that Metropolitan Water District did not tell you this today. Based on today, you would be voting on a blank check rate increase on your residents. The entire point of the vote was that Metropolitan was only going to be voting on 26%, and that agriculture and other players would be about 45% of the CVP. Today, one of the biggest players, the Westlands Water District, pulled out. They said, as the project currently stands, they say no, 7-1 vote. So that is gone. That 45% is gone today. Met may come up here and say, it's okay, trust us. It's only going to be 26%. We won't raise your water bills more than that. Trust us. And Governor Brown might be desperate on his way out of office. My question for you, it would be the utmost height of irresponsibility as city council members today to vote on this. You have nothing in writing. You have no approvals that Glendale residents won't pay way more. LA City Council today refused to vote on this project, citing the risk to ratepayers, scrutinizing the project, citing they needed things in writing about the risk to ratepayers. LA is the biggest customer of MET, 20% vote. They're very concerned. If the biggest cities are not voting on this and wanting to take more information, why would you take on this risk and liability tonight? Many more cities have concerns. In fact, a former Met board member and city council member said today, LA City Council member said today, he did not trust the information that Met was providing to their water department. They just fired their ethics officer because their ethics officer was maybe doing ethics. So are you going to grill Metropolitan tonight the way that you grilled your about a city contract tonight? Are you going to have that due diligence? I hope so. They delayed the vote until October 10th at Met at the request of these concerns, so there's no rush for this vote tonight with all this new information. And again, 45%, that question is still out. This is a classic cartoon showing that there may not be any water for anybody, but there's definitely not going to be any water from this project for Glendale. There's not a shred of evidence that Glendale's water will be reduced or impacted and that you need the tunnels, not a shred. The tunnels will bring, as they said, zero additional water or new benefit to, new water to Glendale residents. There's not a shred of evidence that this will provide that your water supply will be reduced. There's much cheaper solutions like fixing the levees in the Delta that have nothing to do with these tunnels. Listen closely. Metropolitan Water District may want more water, but that's not water for Glendale. Agriculture might want more water, but it's not water for Glendale. Met may want to sell that money to big agriculture, but that's not water for Glendale. Breaking news, there's been a lot of breaking news recently. It was found that taxpayer money was wrongly used to plan for the planning of this tunnels project. A federal audit found $50 million taxpayers paid, when guess who it was supposed to be paid for? Westlands Water District, who today said they didn't want to pay for this, or as it currently is proposed. If they can't pay for the planning of the project, how are they going to pay for the project itself? Who's going to pick up the tab? Glendale residents? There's no protections from Glendale that you'll have runaway rate hikes. The California Treasurer's Office said that there needs to be provisions. If agriculture pulls out later, once construction begins, who's going to pick up the tab? There is nothing in writing. I'm looking at the thing. So all these numbers, all the costs they just gave you are out because it was depending upon 26%, $2 to $3. That was based on 26%. These big players, they're already out. They're basing that on the 26%. Nothing's adding up. Local and water supplies would be cheaper. If you use the official numbers provided in the state EIR document, all these local supply projects are cheaper. The tunnels, if you use the official EIR number, comes in at $2,361 an acre foot. This is not Glendale paying for these programs. These are regional programs, regional benefit. Metropolitan Water District is considering an LA County recycled water program, $160,000 acre foot a year for 16 an acre foot. And LA County is considering a ballot proposal on the 2018 ballot to fund stormwater capture. Some of that comes in at about 150,000 acre feet a year at 183 per acre foot. So you really need to question these numbers because they're not giving you the full range and the approved EIR state document numbers. And you need to see and review these protections in writing before you vote on anything. Just closing out here because I'm looking at my time. So in closing, will you vote to raise water bills and taxes on Glendale residents tonight? your political career as a blank check rate increase and a runaway rate increases. Met is saying 26%. Do you see in your resolution tonight that it's 26%? Is that in writing? No. Does your resolution say 26 and not a cent more? No. So I hope that you do your due diligence here, and there's much cheaper alternatives. And also, I'll just close out with, even if you agree with everything they said, $5 here, $5 there, $5, all these local projects we have to do anyway, because the tunnels don't give us additional water. Okay? Thank you.
Next speaker is Karen Kwok, followed by Steve Bullock, followed by Danielle Brotman.
Hi, I'm Karen Kwok, and I moved to Glendale earlier this year, and I really liked living here, although it's been just a few months. I was also at the Open Arts Festival last Saturday, where I sat at a table with the Glendale Tenants Union, and I would like to thank the City Council members who were gracious enough to stop by our booth. You know, I actually got my Glendale water and power bill this morning, and I actually would not mind paying a little bit more if it would guarantee our local water supplies, but this Delta Tunnels project will not give Glendale any new water. The primary benefit will go to big agricultural interests, which, as Brenna mentioned, are already pulling out, and we have no contracts in writing that they will do their part. And so this would effectively pull money out of the wallets of middle class and working class people and give it directly to our big agricultural interests. And I hope that I can, I would like to mention that at my last job, I worked in the Office of the State Auditor in Boston, Massachusetts, and I've worked on a lot of final audit reports that evaluate the cost of projects after they're completed. And as I'm sure you know from your experience as well, that the final cost of a project often bears very little resemblance to the initial projections. And those final costs are never lower, they're always higher. So I would like you to consider the numbers presented by the gentleman earlier with more than one grain of salt. So I hope that I can rely on the City Council to invest in responsible water projects that would actually increase water for Glendale residents as opposed to benefiting big agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Bullock.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'll put that up there. I'm Steve Bullock, tonight representing the Los Angeles County Business Federation, a grassroots alliance of more than 165 business organizations representing over 325 employers. I'm here tonight to express our strong support for the California water fix. Building the twin tunnels is a long-term, cost-effective solution, on average only costing $2 to $3 per household per month. Its design provides redundant capacity and gives the flexibility to take more water from the Sacramento River when times are flush with major rain and snowfall, thus allowing for less water to be taken out in times of drought. California Water Fix is more than just about transporting water around the state. It plans for improvements in the Delta levee system and provides for habitat restoration for a delta that is strained from human use. It moves the point of water intake to a place that makes better sense, away from the southern part of the delta and to the Sacramento River. The California Water Fix is a long-term solution that will protect our current water supplies for many years to come. We encourage you to support the California Water Fix.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. Next speaker is Daniel Brotman.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Dan Brotman. I'm here as a Glendale ratepayer. I'm also here representing a new group that we've just set up called the Glendale Environmental Coalition. We have about 50 members now, almost all of whom live in Glendale. 2 or 3 of them don't. They work in Glendale. So I'm representing that group today. I see this as a huge investment with very dubious benefits and potentially harmful consequences to the Delta ecology. But the immediate question here for us is costs and benefits. What costs do we end up incurring? Not what we're told here, but what do we truly end up incurring, and what do we get for that? Are the costs borne by the parties that will benefit from this project the most? I don't think they are. We will end up paying a disproportionate share of the cost, but receive very little of the benefits. If you read the LA Times yesterday, there was an article on this project. It said, and I'm going to just quote one section here, it says, "What happens if Central Valley farmers aren't paying their share? Who's going to get stuck with the costs?" And this is from Mark Gold, who represents the Los Angeles on the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California Board. That's one of the big questions that's out there. And to be honest, it's not been very well answered. And then we just heard that today, the Westlands Water District, I think the largest water district in the state perhaps, just voted against participating in this program. So this idea that we're only going to see $2 a month increases in our water bills, I think is really speculative, and I don't believe it. I don't understand why we should be here in Glendale subsidizing, almond and pistachio growers. If this is important enough for the farm communities, let them pay their fair share and not look to free ride on Glendale ratepayers. I'm willing to pay higher rates, but for the right reasons. So let's look at putting this money into conservation and particularly prevention of our water runoff problem. We throw away valuable water resource whenever it rains. So let's please fix that first. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Charlie Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Charlie Wilson. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Southern California Water Committee. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan coalition of public and private interests, cities, counties, water agencies, as you would expect, private business and industry, agriculture, labor, NGOs, and we represent from Kern County to the Mexican border and from the coast all the way to the state lines. Within that context, the State Water Project back in the 1960s in large part helped create the 6th largest economy in the world. It is that same system now that is in need of modernization, which you have heard both from your staff and from Metropolitan. The motion tonight is very simply this. It's about providing cost-effective, reliable water for the next generation of Glendale. It's that simple. And as your staff appropriately pointed out, that is the base on which you perform all other water resource development. Just like you do your financial portfolio, just like you do your energy portfolio. Absent that base, your costs will escalate dramatically. We have heard contradictory statements tonight about alternatives. We've been studying this issue since 1984. The alternatives provided, and we believe in an all-the-above strategy. We need more conservation. We need more efficiency. But the alternatives we are currently looking at are anywhere between 2 and 15 times the cost estimate for the California water fix. Not included in that is the energy intensity that comes with the treatment of all of those other options. So if you also then look at the state's greenhouse gas objectives, you now are exacerbating that problem by relying solely upon these alternatives as opposed to the gravity-fed state water project. To quote Secretary Laird just today, since we're talking about who is in the news, quote, "There is one thing we all agree on. Our aging infrastructure needs to be modernized. Failing to act puts future water supply reliability at risk," end quote. I urge you to support your resolution tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the cards that I have. Let me go back to the council and any questions, any comments? Yeah. I'm going to go to my colleague because he represents Glendale on MWD and Mr. Sinanian.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you for everyone who spoke both in support of the water fix and in opposition. Everyone raised some very interesting points and issues. Obviously, the information that's coming from both sides is diametrically opposite to one another, and that raises some questions that I think hopefully will be answered tonight. So there seems to be some disagreement as to the point of the water fix. And I don't know, maybe Mr. Keitlinger, I can invite you back to the microphone. Those who oppose the water fix stress the point that there's no new water that's going to come. I mean, this is not going to result in Southern California, specifically in this case, Glendale, getting additional water. My understanding always was that this is not about new water. This is about shoring up the infrastructure. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
No, that's exactly right. People like to criticize this project as saying there's no new water. It's not intended to be new water. We are losing water every year because the infrastructure is aging. This is about repairing it and keeping it modern so we don't continue to lose water. It's the same way we invest in our Colorado River aqueduct. We're not getting more water off the Colorado River, but we have to spend a lot of money because it's 80 years old, that aqueduct. We spend a lot of money repairing it and keeping our infrastructure up to speed. This isn't about new water. This is about reliability.
Reliability, and what's at stake if, let's say, the water fix does not move forward? What happens?
So right now, the Central Valley project and the State Water Project are getting, on average, a little less than 5 million acre-feet of water a year to serve 2 in every 3 Californians and all that farmland. All the estimates that have been in the environmental study is that we're going to continue to lose water up to around 1 million acre-feet of water. So it'll shrink. About 20% of that supply will go away over the next couple of decades because of restrictions that are coming in for endangered fish. That will be lost, and that is what this ensures, that we don't lose that.
Okay. It was mentioned that our ethics officer was fired. Our ethics officer, in fact, resigned.
Right.
And followed the long saga of how that came about, and it's not directly related to the water fix at all. In fact, I just want to state that for the record. I want to ask staff some questions. Thank you, Mr. Creighton.
Thank you very much. Just want to say one quick comment. My parents are Glendale residents, and they said they like the project, but they're my parents. Thanks.
We can't have back and forth now. I'm sorry. Go back.
So, if I can continue with my questions of staff.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Zern, so does Glendale need new water? Do we need new water, or the water that we're getting, so long as it's reliable in its current volumes, in relative terms, of course?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think when you look at our growth and you look at where our water use has been and you see how it's progressed over time, and quite frankly, as we've gone through a couple of major droughts, water use habits do change when you go through conservation efforts. But I think you're going to see relatively little growth in our need for more water here in Glendale, as you see in build-outs and developments pretty much stabilize. I'd like to be able to tell you we are going to continue to develop recycled water projects, but unfortunately, we are experiencing some things now that concern me, and that is that there is a tremendous amount of competition for the water that's in the LA River for a lot of different environmental reasons. That water or that flood control channel has turned into something different in the minds of a lot of people. So there is a lot of competition for the water that's going in there, which could limit our ability to use the recycled water for potable replacement. But I think that for us, the issue of the reliability is very big. Keep in mind, today we're about 60%, as Mr. DeGhetto presented. We've been as high as 70%. And I don't know that number is going to fluctuate a whole lot from there. I think we're continuously going to be 60 to 70% dependent on imported water. As Mr. DeGhetto indicated, we have some pumping rights in the Verdugo Mountains. I do not see that coming back in any great degree. There's nitrate issues up there, so it requires treatment. We have virtually zero rights in the San Fernando Basin, and that's been upheld by the courts. We don't expect that that's going to change at all over time. So our dependence on imported water in general, and specifically from MWD, is vital, and it will continue to be vital. And I will tell you that as a founding member of that organization, we have benefited greatly. As a city that wouldn't be large enough to build, this kind of infrastructure projects and be able to guarantee the delivery of water to the city of Glendale, it's been invaluable to us, and it will continue to be invaluable to us. And their efforts in keeping their infrastructure up have benefited us. And I have to tell you, one thing that's been consistent has been the delivery of that water and very competitive pricing. Their prices have remained at MWD very, very stable, and those increases are very little. In just the 5 years I've been there, I've been amazed at having gone through some pretty serious water drought situations of how they run their operation and how they prepare for the future. And I think that's exactly what this is preparation for the future to maintain the flow of water that we have today for all intents and purposes. So for us, I think there's a long way of saying, Mr. Sinani, and it really is the majority of our concern here is the reliability and keeping that reliability.
Brenna Norton, in her comments, cited, so I think a LA City Council member or their former representative on Metropolitan Water District, and I think others also cited some LA representatives speaking against the water fix. Is LA situated are they sort of in a different place than we are? And if so, why? Why does there seem to be some reluctance to support the water fix?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Sinani, and they, as always, in whatever we do, are the big dog in the yard. Whether we're doing the electric side of the business or we're doing the water side of the business, or for that matter, any business that you're in. I think that they have certainly a much greater water resources that are specific to Glendale or specific to LA than we do or any other agency does. Those San Fernando Valley water basin rights I talked about. You heard Mr. Keitlinger briefly talk about the aqueduct that they count as their water, but it's really all LA's water. So, they may be at a point in time where, who knows, is it a negotiation? What are their thoughts as far as environmental impacts? Are they less concerned about the flow of water from an outside agency because they have enough internal assets to rely on? I think it may be a combination of all of those. Mr. Keitlinger may have more insight into that, but I think that they're obviously in a much better position than we are when it comes to their portfolio of water assets, if you will, and the diversity of that portfolio, and their need to rely on a single or two sources is a lot less than somebody like Glendale or a city like Glendale.
Okay. If I can ask one more question to Mr. Keitlinger, and the question is getting hammered constantly. The 26%.
Yes.
That number is based on a number of assumptions of everyone participating in the water fix. And what happens when other districts or other entities don't want to be part of this and they pull out? How's that going to work? And maybe you can explain also a little bit how does the cost associated with the water fix get passed on to individual ratepayers, for example, Glendale residents?
So starting at the back of that, the way it gets passed on is by how much water you buy. Almost all our water is on what we call a volumetric rate. So if you buy a lot of water, you pay more at MET, and if you don't buy much water, you pay very little at MET. 85% of our costs are attributed to the amount of water you buy. So if Glendale's buying water for Metropolitan, that goes into your rates cost, and then you spread that to your ratepayers, just depending on how much water you buy for Metropolitan. In terms of the 26%, the only thing we are asking our board to do is authorize 26%. If we have a shortfall, and Westlands has voted, one of the water districts that would be part of this has voted currently to not be in it. The governor has put out a statement saying, well, we're going to continue talking with them. But if there is that shortfall, if it's big enough, you probably don't have a project. It probably doesn't go forward. If it's small enough, I think you'll see some people willing to sell off some of their water, and some people may be interested in buying it. Silicon Valley has said they're interested in buying up some extra water. So is Coachella Valley. So has
you mean they'll chip in more than their percentage quota that they're...
Correct. But they're only going to chip in more if they get that water, if they get the benefit. The project has always moved forward on, there will not be a subsidy for agriculture. If there has to be a subsidy, there won't be a project.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Keitlinger. So all the questions I have for now.
Okay. Ms. Devine?
Oh, you go to Brej.
Doesn't matter.
I just have a couple of questions, comments. Mr. Zern, you made me feel a little bit more comfortable when you said that MWD has been fair, because the first thing that came to my mind after hearing our speakers was, is this going to be like Measure H money, where we're going to be fighting for water that we've, that we've paid for, that our residents have put up, an extra payment in their bills. So you don't see that in the future?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, again, we are MWD. Glendale is MWD. So, and it's something we're really proud of, and I think it's something that's benefited us greatly. And so, to the point that we are in that mix of making the decisions, actually making the decisions, but also one of the, as MWD treats its members, and they treat us really well. I will say that again. And again, realizing I've only been in this business for 5 years, so I came from a different side of the house. And so having the experience, hearing about MWD from the outside, then experiencing it firsthand, it's been a tremendous partnership. And I can't imagine where we'd be today if it wasn't for the fact that we had gotten on board and helped form and create this and have reaped the benefits. So absolutely, I don't expect there to be anything but benefit to the city in the future.
So when people say we have no guarantee, are you saying that we can depend on?
I can't come up to say absolutely positively guarantee you, but again, this effort is one of many that MWD has undertaken to ensure the long term. You heard Mr. Keitlinger talk about one of their largest reservoirs that has been built in my lifetime here, and I know that has been a tremendous asset. Their storage facilities that they've built up over the last several years have been tremendous. That eye to the infrastructure, and think about that from our local perspective and how important it has been for us and how supportive you've been of me, either as Public Works Director or as the General Manager of Water and Power, when I need money to build and to implore you to make sure that we replace those pipes and upgrade those substations. And fairly soon I'll ask you for a really big one on a power generation facility. But that infrastructure is so critical to keep it up, to keep not only it in good operational condition, to keep it sized appropriately. And again, this is a project that is doing that. It's going after it and keeping the infrastructure up. When across the country, you can see, especially water infrastructure, seems to be an asset that gets let go quite a bit. There are a lot of places in this country that aren't benefiting the way we are from having a public works agency like MWD.
Well, I did a lot of research and talking to people and reading, and one of the statements that you made kind of rings true. Is it better to be prepared or to be unprepared for the future? And I think the answer to that is obvious. It's better to be prepared. This would be earthquake safe, the way they plan on building it, 100 feet, I guess, below. And the main reason for this is to protect and enhance our water supply so that we continue to have water for the next, well, it's going to take 15 years to build, so for the next generation anyway.
Yes, ma'am. I think, and we even said maybe even 2 generations, as it was mentioned, but absolutely that would be correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dewan. Mr. Al-Jani.
Is City of LA, is part of Metropolitan Water District?
Yes, sir. They're the largest member.
Okay. So what happens if they're not participating? Then the cost, where it's going to go?
I think, and I'll defer to Mr. Keitlinger, but I think it goes back to that question of if there isn't enough, there's no project. If there's enough no's that are in there that they can't meet that, then there isn't a project. If it's a small number, and certainly LA is not a small number.
LA has voting members. Just like
they have 5 voting members, and
okay, but the point is that let's say City of LA joins, and then a smaller city, they don't join to be part of this, the project, and it passes. Let's assume it passes. Like there are majority they vote. Then what happened with that city?
If I may, Mr. Al-Jani, the MWD is going to vote on it as a body. Either it passes in MWD or it doesn't. I mean, LA doesn't get to vote separately, not vote. I mean, their 5 members will vote however it is that they'll vote as part of the general vote at the Metropolitan Water District.
Now my question is, let's say Burbank or Glendale say is voting against it. Still they have to pay for this project?
Well, you can't vote against it, that's what I'm saying.
Even passes by...
they'll be stuck with it.
So they are stuck with this project if it passes?
Unless we decided to stop buying water.
And Burbank approved it, by the way.
Okay, but I'm just saying another small city maybe say no, and I want to see if they are obligated to pay. The other question I have is on this page 6, I guess, of what you staff provided in the, not on this brochure, no.
The pennies? No.
On the booklet which we get. Future bond rate scenarios. Is this like we are assuming 4%, 6%, 8%? What we are assuming? It's future rates that it might be higher? What we are calculating? On page 6, inside the booklet. Staff report.
Okay.
Under the fiscal impact, Steve.
Right. So that is, I think Mr. DeGhetto spoke to that, and he can give you detail, but he was showing you there are 3 different rate scenarios because there's 3 different potential bond, that would be the interest on the bonds.
Right.
So 4, 6, or 8, and depending on which of those, that would be the cost increase per acre foot, which is how we buy it from MWD by acre foot. So that would be our increase. So in other words, if it was an 8% interest bond, we would be paying just under $200 extra an acre.
No, but then you guys said that the increase per household will be $2 to $3.
Correct.
So which scenario we are talking about?
There's 2 different scenarios. We buy the water on an acre foot basis. Right. We sell it on a 100 cubic foot basis.
No,
so
but
there's a
you don't know what the percentage future bond rate.
We took the conservative. We took the conservative approach when we did the 0.4%. We went 4%? The higher interest rate.
8%?
No. I'm sorry. Let me start. The 0.4 of the penny, the 0.39 on the penny. We were conservative in our estimate and assumed the higher interest rate. So if it's lower, the number will even be lower than the 0.39.
Okay.
So we were conservative in what we estimated would be the impact to the residents. And so if that bond issuance debts interest rate is lower, that 0.39 will go down. I don't know to what. We didn't run it with every scenario, but we could if you're interested.
You were saying. Mayor Garpetian, Councilmember Agajanian. So the part of MET's analysis, they did some white papers on different parts, and one was financing. And really what I was talking about here, what I pulled from that was the main driver of the cost is going to be the debt service for that $17 billion project.
Right.
So depending on those percentages, that trickles into the cost per acre foot, as Mr. Zern was saying, that we would pay MET. And to us, that's really the rate increase. That's how we would see the rate increase. So when I did my analysis on the $2 to $3, it was, I think, $2 to $3.43. The 2 would be the 4%, and the 3.43 would be the 8%. I was just trying to give the range. And then when I converted that to gallons, I just used the 8%. Okay. Just because I was trying to show that I was like a really small number per gallon. So I just figured I'd use the bigger percentage.
Even at the highest.
Yeah, even at the highest.
One more question. What percentage of the water in volume of ACFT or gallons, how much of a MWD water we get, percentage to total water they provide for entire Southern California, or portion of Southern California?
Our portion of MWD?
Yeah.
I think it's about 2%. It's right around 2%.
So then our cost will be also 2% of total cost of MWD?
It's pretty close. It's
how
pretty
they
close to that.
divide it? That's what I wanted to see. Per gallons, per AC?
Per acre
FT?
foot, per acre foot, which is 325,900 gallons, right, is per acre foot, and that's the rate that Met charges us. And then when we charge our customers, we use 100 cubic feet because it's hard to
I'm
talk
trying
about.
to get that the portion that they have to do the construction. So we pay based on how much we buy from MWD.
Yes.
And MWD will pay that portion, that entire tunnel cost?
They're only going to pay 26% of the tunnel cost.
Based on what?
Based on the cost sharing, depending on, there's two things. There's the Central Valley project and there's the State Water project. And of the State Water project, Met's a State Water project contractor. So the overall project cost percent that goes to Met is the 26%. So 74% of the rest of that's going to be paid by other water agencies that are State Water project contractors, and then irrigation districts and things like that that are State Water project contractors, as well as the contractors on that Central Valley project.
And then of the 26%, that gets spread over all the metropolitan membership, and that keeps the cost per acre foot down.
Right.
So instead of us being maybe a lone buyer of a water broker somewhere that we might pay triple that amount, we get the benefit of having this larger organization that's able to spread the costs over the membership, and then that keeps the acre foot cost down, which then in turn helps keep the cost to our customers down. It's the biggest cost we have, by the way, is the water purchase. So in the water operation, it is a big part of our rate schedule, our cost of service analysis, and ultimately our rate schedule.
And then if our customers or our residents conserve,
we buy less.
We buy less, they pay less.
Correct.
And they've been quite good about doing that.
That's absolutely right. And that's why both, as I mentioned and Mr. DeGhetto talked about, when we do the COSAs, that's where that comes out. We go back, we do the cost of service analysis, we look back, we look forward, and we say, hey, here's where we are. We have probably since the official end of the drought maintained about a 15% decrease from where we were in 2013, I think, Mike, was the year we benchmarked.
Yeah, 2013.
And I'm going to tell you that's probably about the plateau. That's what I was talking about earlier when I say you go through a tough drought period, you get in conservation, you get in mandatory conservation, and you get people's habits changing. Those habits generally don't change. You know, people suddenly realize I can do okay at my house with 3 days of watering. I can do okay. You know, I finally realized, I put a timer on my kids and the showers go down. But it's amazing how people's habits change. So our water consumption is significantly lower than it was 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. No, what was the answer to the issue of no water for Glendale? They raised an issue of no water for Glendale. Have we answered that question?
Mayor Garpetian and Councilmember Agajanian, yeah, this project's very focused on reliability. And so the issue that's happening right now is the actual water that we're getting from the State Water Project is going down, and it's not very reliable. So by doing this project, it maintains that reliability. And for us, the thing that's important about that is 60% of our water comes from MWD. So whenever MWD has a shortage, there's a shortage plan that goes into place for all the member agencies, and then we have to cut back. Now, during this last drought, Met had implemented the shortage, but the governor's drought declaration was actually stricter than that. So we were able to stay under that shortage allocation that Met had given us. So, the estimates in the future are with more environmental regulations and more issues really just related to that delta and the way the fish are responding, actually physically, that there might be a shortage like that 3 out of every 10 years. So having those tunnels in place help the reliability, and then it helps, Mr. Keitlinger had that one graph where he was showing the storm events and things like that. It helps capture some of those storm flows that we're not able to pump now and then put it in the storage, like at Diamond Valley Lake and places like that, to help get through those other dry years. So this project really helps with that reliability.
And I think, Mr. Agajanian, to reiterate something Mr. Keitlinger said, it was never meant to be a project that brought more water in. It was meant to be an upgrade of the infrastructure to try to maintain what we have, and not only that, but go back and regain some of what we'd lost, but never the intention to bring more new water, I think is the term people are using, new water, into the area.
Mr. Mayor, I guess there was a lady who wanted to say something. If you don't mind, at any time that you think it's proper, let her to express herself.
Do you have a question for her? Because we can't
No,
have a
she
debate.
was trying to say something.
No, I
I want to make
understand.
sure that we heard what she was trying to raise.
I would like to hear her also.
Okay, but I don't want to have a debate between
No,
two
we
sides.
just want to hear
Come up,
what
please.
she was trying to say.
You have 2 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity. The State Water Board is still about a year out or more from making, there's no permit on how much water you can legally take from the Delta. And there's no approved permit on that. So in a year, the State Water Board may further reduce water from the Delta that we can all take. So there's no guarantee on water for anybody on this project. And in fact, the San Francisco Chronicle editorial board just published saying it would be insane for water boards to commit to this project when they have absolutely no idea how much water they're going to get, if at all. So I think that's the key point there.
Okay.
I wasn't prepared to speak again, so let me see if there's something else here. I think that's the key point about the permit there, and just have it. Let me see if I have anything else to add here. But all their cost numbers of the 26% are based on these other players. All the numbers they gave you, $2 to $3 a month, are based on that 26%, which is now
Thank you.
out the door. My time's still going, so I'm going to take another second here. And these programs we talked about are LA County regional programs. So LA County is considering a parcel tax that's regional, that's spread across the county, and would actually provide new water. And we know these tunnels are not going to provide any new water, but there's absolutely zero threat to your existing water supply. And the State Water Board may cut back on the amount we can take from the Delta. So what are we really talking about here? You have no guarantees of that your existing water supply is all at risk.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one more question, not from her, but general question.
Okay.
Is LA County a customer of MWD?
The County of Los Angeles?
Yes.
I don't believe so, but...
Where do they get their water?
Okay, Mr. Aljan, if you have a question, please come up, because we have to have the gentleman at the podium.
Yeah, we serve water throughout the area, but they have their own supplies, but they actually buy through one of our member agencies. So while they don't have a seat on our board, through one of our member agencies called West Basin MWD, parts of LA County actually purchase water from us that way. So they don't have a seat on our board, but they do get some water from us.
And what they have decided, whichever agency you mentioned, a name that they buy from them.
Yes. So
they
will
decide what they want to vote for in favor of this project? Or you don't know?
So of our 26 member agencies, about 14 now have acted to decide to tell their delegates their view. Eventually, we're going to vote August 10th. Of the 14 agencies that have acted, all have acted to say we support the project, including Burbank, Pasadena, a number of others. So 14 now have said we support the project. There's 12 that haven't acted as of yet. That West Basin agency that you mentioned, they've acted to support.
But the largest city, LA, is not in favor.
No, LA has not taken a position one way or another. Their city council may take a vote on it, but it would just be advisory. The mayor's delegates will take their vote October 10th, and until we know that, we don't know what LA is going to do. They're asking a lot of tough questions, as you are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my turn, I guess. I have some questions from staff, then I will go to Mr. Keitlinger. We invested $20 million in our infrastructure for the water system, recycling system, right? And how much of I know that we are releasing about. Can you tell me how many gallons a day are we releasing into LA River?
We'll see if Mr. DeGhetto has that committed to memory. It's 7%.
I heard about 10 million gallons a day. I don't know if it's the right
Mayor
number or not.
Garpetian, because of our share from Legwarp per day, it might be about 6 million gallons a day right now, and so we have plans to use the rest of that. We have our longstanding agreement with the City of Pasadena. It's going to double the amount. And then, like on the map that I was showing, we have some more sort of known places we're going to send it.
Can you tell me what is the city's daily water usage, approximately per day? How many gallons a day do we use?
It's funny because I was working
because it said 9,000 some gallons in our report.
Oh, household, like average household?
Average household per year.
Per month.
Per month. So how many households do we have what's that averaged out to?
And that's a single-family household, so we have 34,000 meters. Of those, how many are single-family?
Right.
I think, not to guess, is that something we can get you? Because we'll have to do
Okay,
this
because I want to understand as to that recycled, because 60% of our water, 40% of our water that's being used by residents is for landscaping, right? 40% is for landscaping. I want to know how much of the recycled water every day we release into LA River that goes into the ocean, right? It doesn't stay in the river. So we are spending a lot of money, or we're planning to spend a lot of money on the infrastructure, but there are other ways locally as well that we need to look into to see how can we save, because I think we are obligated, or the lawsuit was about, what was the lawsuit about? That we have to release our recycled water into LA River because of the obligation we have based on the
we've been challenged
that we have, or we've been challenged.
Mr. Mayor, we've been challenged. It has yet to be decided, but it was an interesting challenge because that was exactly what it was. We were proposing to use that water to replace potable water, whether it was here or at Pasadena. And LA has some issues with it because they feel that, at least in their mind, it should go into the river. And that, I think, is part of the whole river development and the River Walk project and creating an estuary and a recreational facility out of that particular flood control channel. So that's, and at the plant, it's generally rated as a 20 MGD, 20 million gallon per day plant. Half of that's ours. The City of LA Bureau of Sanitation operates it, and they'll tell you that it may not operate the capacity every day, but we get half of that. And I think Mike was talking about 10. We use about 6.
Yeah.
So there's about 4 out there left to develop. We'd love to develop that. Mike showed you some real short-term plans. We're looking at longer-term plans, trying to get it at, what's the biggest bang for the buck? That's why we went after the Hoover-Keppel toll. That was, you're looking at trying to replace acre-feet of water, not just, small amounts. So we'll continue to develop those to the extent that we can, and if they're beneficial to us, and that those that have other opinions allow us to do that.
Mayor Garpetian, and I think maybe to get a little bit, I think what you're trying to ask is if we used all of our right from Legwarp, and we didn't have our agreement with Pasadena, and we used all that, that might be about another 6,000 acre-feet a year that we could use here in Glendale.
And what percentage of our total water usage is that 6,000?
So it's only about 25%.
Okay, there you go.
So,
25% of the water that we use a year is being dumped into LA River.
Mayor Garpetian, because I've looked at this before, because we were asked this before. When you look at the map of the recycled system, and I show that map and I show those pipelines, those are the only pipelines for the recycled system. So in order to get, first of all, the regulations don't allow us to put recycled water to private residences. It can only be to businesses and commercial facilities or to parks, because you have to have an on-site supervisor that's trained on how to use the recycled water to make sure there aren't any cross connections. But in order to use the rest of that, it would be hundreds of millions of dollars of new pipelines that we'd have to install in the streets to get to every single park and every single piece of grass and every business and every place where we could use it. And that's why when I talk about that Glendale T project, that's a really good one because there's already buildings that have dual plumbing in it. It's just we don't have any recycled water there.
Okay.
And one of the reasons we have that as our last one is because of the amount. It's a really long, expensive project to put a recycled main down one of our downtown streets to only pick up another 50 acre feet. So that I hope that gets to your question.
How much of our water is the water that we get from MWD, 40% is from local supplies, 25% is from Colorado River, and 30% is from the Delta. Am I correct? 'Cause that's what this map is telling me.
I don't know if I went into how much was between the Colorado and the State Water Project. Is
that was in the first presentation?
No, it's in the first presentation that Mr. Keitlinger presented.
I would just say, for Glendale, it varies because MET system's built in a way where it's very flexible. So if there's a shortage on the State Water Project, we might get Colorado River Aqueduct water. If it's the other way around, there's a shortage on Colorado River Aqueduct, we'll get all State Water Project water. And one thing that's very fortunate about, like Mr. Zern was talking about, our relationship with MWD and just almost geographically where we're situated, is we're able to get water from MET system from two different directions. So we, some of that cooperation, we work with MET staff if they have a shutdown to do maintenance. And we're very rarely have a shutdown just because of where we're located in the MET system.
Okay.
So
thank you. Mr. Keitlinger, if you would please come up, I have a few short questions for you. In your presentation, you mentioned that, what slide is page 5 or slide number 5? It says water flowing from Delta watershed. 48% goes to Pacific Ocean, right? From
yes.
that water?
On average, yes.
On average. And Delta exports 17%, upstream is 31%. Is this tunnel, I just want to understand this whole thing. I'm kind of trying to still wrap my brain around it. The tunnels go from where to where?
So the tunnels are at right now where the reservoirs are, and they're north of the Delta. Oroville, Shasta for the two projects. They drop off the water, it goes into the Sacramento River, and it flows by the river till it hits the Delta. Okay. Now the tunnels would be at the south end of the Delta where the pumps are today, to the north end of the Delta, basically outside of a small town called Hood, which is just south of Sacramento. So it's about this 40-mile stretch of these Delta channels that will be the bypass.
And the purpose of the tunnel is to be able to flow the water differently?
Yes. Right now, when we turn on the pumps to operate the system, it pulls the water from the Sacramento River through the series of channels in the Delta. And that's what causes problems for the fish, because the fish are trying to migrate east and west, and now suddenly the Delta water is moving north and south. So it'll allow the Delta flows and the river flows to get back to a more natural flow system, because we're going to take the water and move it out of the Delta, put it underneath it.
Okay. And also 30% of our water is from the Delta area, am I correct?
All of Southern California gets 30% of their water on average from the Delta, but as Mr. DeGhetto pointed out, you and Glendale are sort of lucky. You're in what we call our central pool. We can give you Colorado River water just as equally as we can give you State Water Project.
So by building these tunnels, we're only, because we're not getting any new water, right, as it was indicated. So the impact would be on that 30% that we're getting today.
That's right.
So I want to understand this, every gallon that we use in Glendale, the rate is going to go up, or is just the 30% of the water that we use that is going to go up?
We spread our costs across all our water, so every gallon, acre foot of water you buy from Metropolitan will go up a little bit to pay for this project, and that becomes that $2 to $3 per household in your area.
Okay. And I sit on different boards with SCAG, and the biggest, 800-pound gorilla out there is the CEQA.
Yes.
How's this project going to, deal with CEQA issues? Because every large project that we have out there is being challenged based on CEQA, and that's why there is a lot of talk in Sacramento about CEQA reform.
Right.
Can you explain to me a little bit as to how is it going to be dealt with, and if this is approved and you have the funding, who's going to build it, how long would it take, what's the timing and everything on it?
Sure. So we have completed the CEQA and NEPA review, the state and federal environmental reviews. Those processes have been completed. It got the record of decision on the notice of determination signed by the governor on the CEQA document. And these were huge. There were 120,000 pages CEQA document. It took almost 10 years to compile. It's a big project. So that has been completed. It was signed off in July. Naturally, there's a lot of litigation. There's a couple dozen lawsuits challenging the adequacy of the CEQA review. We're going to grind our way through that. That's part of being in California. Who's going to design and build it? We were working with Department of Water Resources. They were originally going to design and build it. We didn't have a lot of confidence that they had the team that would do a good job on that, particularly after looking at some recent projects, such as like Bay Bridge and other issues the state's done. So now there's going to be a JPA of water contractors, which will include Metropolitan, and we sign a contract with the state of California, and we're going to handle the design and construction of the project. Once it's completed, we turn it back over to the state for operation.
And I don't know if you will have the answer to this question. There's always been a debate on it. What percentage of the entire water usage in California, what percentage is being used by farmers, what percentage is recreational, and what percent are us, poor people, at the end of that water drop?
So
the consumers.
Right. Just like that slide showed for the Delta, it's true for the rest of California. About half the water in the state runs off and goes to the ocean. Of the half that we use for people, almost 80% of that is used by agriculture, 20% is used by cities for municipal, homeowner, industrial use. So it is 4-to-1, pretty much agriculture to cities.
41 to cities. Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
One last question for Mr. Zern. What is our water supply in case of emergency? I think it was 43 days, if I'm not mistaken.
We have, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we have been looking at our water storage issues overall. We've had, in some cases, too much, as much as 365 days water, or 365-day-old water. So we've been trying to adjust that down. But I think conservatively, we have probably about, it's less than 40 days. I thought we had something in closer to about 25 days.
Mayor Garpetian, we try and run, so when we have the water in our system, it's treated water, ready to drink. So we try and have a good amount of turnover in that to keep it fresh. Normally we'll keep about a week. We try and keep it to a week or less. But if there's something planned, like MWD shutdown, we can put more reservoirs, more cells in service, and we can go almost a month, really, the way ours is set up. But Metropolitan, when we talk about the water supplies, even when we go through those allocations that we went through during the drought, there's still really almost a 6-month emergency supply left that Met keeps in reserve kind of for the region if there's a really big disaster. And in a case of something like that, all the member agencies, I would come to council and we would ask, hey, let's go to zero watering, no fountain filling, and all those kind of things if there was that sort of emergency to really stretch that out. So.
Except the fountain in City Hall, it has to always be. And that's my favorite fountain.
And Mr. Mayor, and members of the council, to that, one of the reasons we're able to go down is that we have outstanding 2 connections to MWD water. One of them that was our main connection that was most recently upgraded by MWD. So our ability to fill our reservoirs on a rather quick basis, and we did it during the most recent fire because that's when we had to get those reservoirs filled quick. Our access to MWD water is nearly instantaneous. So that's why even if we were to keep, for water quality purposes, something less than a week or a week, let's call it a week, our ability to push that up rather quickly and have excess supply is pretty easy because of that.
So the resolution we have today is we're supporting this infrastructure upgrade, basically, or the tunnels, and it's $17 billion. If all the other agencies involved, if they have the votes, it will pass. If it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. But if it passes and 2 years later the number is $25 billion, it happens, some of these infrastructure projects. At that case, do we have the chance, the opportunity to say, look, this is too expensive, we don't want to do it? Or how does that work?
I think certainly the board does. But maybe Mr. Gardner.
Obviously, if the project goes haywire and people want to drop out, that was something that could happen. We're on for 26%. It has a 35% contingency in it, so we've been very conservative. We're pretty confident that it can be delivered at these numbers with that 35% contingency. I mean, the real cost of construction is about $10 billion.
So 35% is part of that. That $17 billion includes that 35%
Correct.
contingency. Okay, thank you. Okay. If there are no other comments or questions, is there a motion?
Yes, I just want to make a comment that I'm not really comfortable with this project. This is a big, unpredictable project, in my opinion. But however, I'm willing to vote in favor of it.
And I'll make a short comment. I think any project of this magnitude has elements of unpredictability, and the fail-safes, to the extent they're possible, are there in the form of, if sort of the deal that we're getting is the deal that we're getting, and if it's not the deal that we're getting, then there is no deal. I mean, this project's not going to move forward. And you can't ask for more certainty than that. But what's at stake is our ability to, at least in the foreseeable future, to have reliable source of water. It doesn't have to be new water, it's the same water, the water that we need, but reliable. Our infrastructure needs continuous investment, and this is just that type of project. Glendale does not have any meaningful water rights. We don't really produce, or we don't own any water that can supplement our water needs, and we do rely on water that's being channeled to Glendale from other sources. So it's not to be taken lightly. It's very important. And one issue I think that wasn't really, maybe we didn't spend enough time on is the issue of sort of recycling and using the existing waters, to treating water and using that type of water better, or investing more money in those sources of water. I don't think this comes at the expense of that. I think we should parallel track those two, and I believe that will be done. But again, the volume of water that we need to receive for our day-to-day activities is such that in the foreseeable future, it's not. I don't think it's possible to treat water and or recycle water and fulfill our needs. So I am going to support it.
Is that a motion?
I will move the item.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please. Quiet in the room, please. Roll call, sir.
Councilmembers Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Jarian? Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian?
Yes. Next item, please.
8B is City Treasurer regarding City of Glendale investment policy. B1 is a resolution adopting city investment policy for fiscal year 2017-18. C is also a Treasurer's report. It's annual review of the city portfolio. C1 is a motion accepting report for fiscal year ending in June 30th, 2017.
Good evening, Mayor
Malukian.
Garpetian, council members. Today we'll be presenting the annual Treasurer's Annual Report to the council and to the community. We do have a 75-slide presentation, but we're going to go to the shorter version.
Oh, good. I was going to say, if
15
if Councilmember Najarian was here, I'd say, can we make this short and sweet? In his absence, I will say, can we make this short and sweet?
We will make it short. And
Sweet.
today we will be presenting the operations of the office, the investment portfolio, then the investment policy with the changes to the policy. I'd like to introduce Gia Murray, who will be presenting the operations. Gia. She's our Chief Operating Officer in the office. So,
welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Gia Murray. I'm the city's Assistant City Treasurer. I will be presenting the first part of the City Treasurer's Annual Report for fiscal year 2016-2017. My task tonight will be to provide you and the viewing public some information of what we do in the Treasurer's Office, as well as reviewing what we did in fiscal year 2016-2017. The investment portion of the report will be presented by one of our staff members following my presentation. The Treasurer's Office has three main functions in the city: investments, banking relationship, and trustee responsibilities. Banking relationship. The Treasurer's Office acts as the banker for the city, safeguarding all city monies through the use of strong internal controls. The office collects revenues from various city departments, are combined into bank deposits, then are transported to the bank by armored courier. The office handles the city's banking relationship, which consists of contract administration, daily treasury management, and reconcilement of all bank accounts. Trustee responsibilities. The office acts as trustee if various city street improvement bonds are issued, maintaining street assessment records, mailing bond statements, and recording debt payment until all bonds are retired. Currently, there are no street improvement bonds. This next slide lists the services provided and work activities performed in the office. Collecting departments' daily revenue collections, assisting departments in their banking needs, reconciling the city's investments and bank accounts, performing various adjustments, supplying change, scanning and transmitting check images to the bank, processing outgoing wires, incoming wires, and other electronic payments, handling stop payments on checks, providing check status, handling records requests, and providing guidance and training to all cash handlers. The City Treasurer's Office is a small but busy office. Manned by 5 employees, the office has 1 executive, 1 manager, 3 support staff. To get an appreciation of the activity volume that flows through the office, we pulled some key statistics worth sharing. This slide reflects 3 years of data, highlighting fiscal year 2016-2017. Over $8.2 million of cash deposits were processed over the counter. Over 42,000 checks were scanned and transmitted to the bank. Over 4,200 incoming wires and other electronic payments processed, and 695 wire payments were sent out. The office reconciles 8 checking accounts and 33 credit card accounts, also known as merchant accounts. Over 61,000 transactions hit the bank account. That represented $684 million of deposit that staff reconciled. The office also handles various records requests. In fiscal year 2016-2017, the office processed 163 requests. Another key data worth mentioning, fraud activities. As you know, this is on the rise all over the world. As mentioned earlier, the office safeguards the city's money through the use of strong internal controls. Both management and staff exercises care and vigilance, monitoring city accounts daily and acting quickly when unusual activities occur. In fiscal year 14-15, there were 26 fraud attempts. In 15-16, there were 10 attempts. In 16-17, There were 6 attempts. You will notice that the numbers reported here are small, but you will agree that these numbers are better or lower, if not non-existent. This next line represents the dollar amounts of the rejected fraud items. In 14-15, 18,714 were rejected. In 15-16, 6,956. In 16-17, $10,470. The office employs fraud prevention tools and practices, and in doing so, the loss the city would have otherwise taken was prevented. Credit card and debit card service fee. Last year, June 2016, City Council approved this new fee to help offset the city's credit card costs. Once approved, Treasurer's Office got busy implementing the program, coordinating with the bank and card network to be eligible to charge cardholders, deploying and setting up terminals at various department locations, training and guiding city cash handlers in the processing of the new fee. In February 2017, the city started collecting the new service fee. And in just 6 months, over $38,000 of new revenues were collected for fiscal year 2016-2017. This number is on a high-level overview. Next year, once we have more data, you will receive more details on the amount collected as well as the progress of the program. This concludes part 1 of the annual report. I will now turn it over to our chief to introduce our next member.
Thank you, Gia.
Sorry, can I ask a question now?
Can you keep the questions till the end?
Yeah.
Thank you. Key point is that we review every transaction for every account on a daily basis for every bank account, so that the city does not lose any money. The second part of the annual report, which is the investment portfolio, will be presented by Aras Korabakshi, who started with the city as a GYA worker. She has her master's in public administration currently, and she's our senior treasury technician. Aras?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, staff and residents. My name is Aras Korabashi. I'm the Treasury and Investment Operations Technician at the City Treasurer's Office. Tonight, I'll be presenting to you our investment annual report as of June 30, 2017. The first slide is our investment philosophy and objectives. This is a refresher that we review every year. Our general investment policies are guided by the prudent person rule, which means exercising good judgment, caring conduct, and due diligence. Our investment objectives are preservation of principal, ensuring liquidity, then securing yield. Risk is not tolerated, and our rate of return should at least meet the annual total return on a 3-month Treasury bill. This chart relates to our first investment objective, which is preservation of principal. These are all 6 portfolios that the city currently has: the city's successor agency, Glendale Redevelopment Agency bonds, and water and electric revenue bonds, for a total of $754 million. This amount has increased from 2016 at $718 million to 2017 at $754 million. This slide simply reflects and accounts for the total city investments and cash on hand. The total city investment portfolio as of June 30, 2017 is at $681 million and cash on hand at $54 million for a total of $736 million. This amount is also up $144 million from $592 million at the end of 2016. This pie chart shows last year's asset allocations. It's a composition of the city's investment portfolio showing where our dollars were invested in 2016. Let's take a look at this year's asset allocations. We notice that the pie charts look alike and the distribution of investments are roughly the same. Similar to last year, more than half of our portfolio is in longer-term investments, a year and out. The rest are in short-term investments, and as you may notice, this pie chart also illustrates a well-diverse portfolio approach. This chart indicates the ratings for our portfolio over the past 5 years, and as you can see, the last column to the very left is the most recent column. We have increased the quality of our overall investments. In 2013, we had virtually no AAA papers. Currently, in 2017, we have quite a few. Also, we have increased the AA high-grade investments in our portfolio as well. This slide relates to our second investment objective, ensuring liquidity. As you can see in this chart, 42% of our assets have a maturity date of less than a year, more than half of which are liquid assets. The rest are short-term investment securities in a form of commercial paper. This chart shows the quarterly yield to maturity for a 3-month, 2-year, and a 5-year Treasury bill in comparison with the rate of return for the city portfolio. And as you can see, the total rate of return for the city exceeds the total annual rate of return on a 3-month Treasury bill, which meets the city's investment objective. And it also exceeds the 2-year Treasury bill at this point as well. Also, another important indicator here is that, as you can see, the interest rate market continues to be volatile, whereas our city portfolio, which is the green line, is very stable and it's on its way up. The year-end key statistics from June 2013 to June 2017, our portfolio has increased from $373 million to $681 million. Our interest earnings have also increased from $2.3 million to $7.4 million. The rate of return of our investments has increased from 70 basis points to 161 basis points. And our weighted average maturity has slightly increased from 21 months to 24 months. That concludes my presentation. Now I'll hand it over to our city treasurer, Mr. Manukian. Thank you.
Thank you, Aras. And as Aras stated, the principal balance in our portfolio are invested in higher quality bonds. We have sufficient liquidity to meet our current obligations, and our yield is 161 basis points, which is 1.61%. I thought it is appropriate to include this chart that compares our yield to other cities, to have a measure of other municipalities and their earnings. As you can see, we are around 160 basis points, and the other cities ranging from La Cañada, Pasadena, Beverly Hills, City of Los Angeles, Santa Monica, they range anywhere from 125 to 150 basis points. We have, I have included the city of Monrovia as well.
No, we're laughing because we're saying Scott should be
I'm not going to say what, I think that's why he didn't come today. just so we're clear.
Yes.
Moving on to the changes to the investment policy. Last time the council made changes to the investment policy was in September 2012. Since then, the state government code has changed, and we're proposing changes to the investment policy to conform with the state code. Most of the changes in the city policy are in form, such as restating the code sections and wording. However, I am proposing that you approve increasing participation percent for corporate medium-term notes from 20 to 30%, and the ratings on these notes from A to A+. I'm also proposing that we eliminate the banker's acceptances, foreign, that is currently allowed in our investment policy. The complete policy is in your packet, and the changes are in red. That is our presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to respond.
Yes, I have a question.
Since I start with the last one. Where the page, it says Exhibit H. You were just showing a little bit earlier.
Okay.
There is no other city that invested which has better return than ours?
There are other cities. No. I don't know if there are any other cities who are earning more than we are. However, based on the cities that we have, the ones that we researched, and the ones that were readily willing to provide their investment policy, not all of them place their policy on the website, and you cannot get it from their website. You have to ask them for it, and they have to send it to you. And based on that, based on these numbers, these are what we came up with.
This is great. Just
thanks to the work of my staff, actually. They're the ones who did the research on this, and I thought it was interesting to have.
Okay. The other one, the lady was talking about fraud attempt. How this comes about?
Just to give you an example, a couple of years ago, we had a number of checks that started going through our bank accounts, and those checks were payroll checks. They were fake payroll checks. They had our account number, they had our bank routing number. However, it had the wrong amounts and the wrong check numbers, and they were caught and they were returned. Things of that sort. There were ACHs as well. However, most of them are checks that try to go through the bank accounts, fake checks.
So these are outsiders trying to.
Yes.
And
they find our account number and our routing number from somewhere, and they make copies of checks, or they make checks with their printers, and they try to cash them.
And they're locals, or they're...
Well, that we don't know, because you can't tell until it's investigated and they're apprehended. But when you say local, they're probably Los Angeles local.
Okay, but we got our money back eventually, or we lost the money?
Well, the money never went through the bank because we stopped it. My good staff that, like I said, check every transaction on a daily basis, and they reconcile the bank statements on a daily basis. They caught them before it went through the bank. We get a listing of all the checks that the city issues, all the checks and all the debits that need to go through the bank on a daily basis, and those lists are checked against our banks and whatever is clearing the bank on a daily basis. And if something does not conform to what we have, our staff contacts the bank and rejects them until we verify what they are, and until we find out who's preparing those checks and why they're being presented to the banks.
So I take it that we did not lose anything through this method, at least.
We did not lose anything.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Devine?
I just wondered, can you repeat the changes that you want? One
Yes.
is on the corporate median term.
The changes, if you look at the investment policy itself, page number 8, if I'm not mistaken.
Just one item?
No, there's 2 items. Page number...
Exhibit 1I.
Isn't this one, Rob?
Yes, page on the policy itself. On page number 7, you have the medium-term notes, which are corporate notes. The corporate notes, the limit is 20% currently for the city. The state limit is 30%, and I'm requesting to raise the limit to 30%. But I'm also requesting that you increase the rating for these corporate notes from A to A+, so that in the future treasurers, as they come after me, will have to invest in higher quality bonds as opposed to lower quality bonds. And there was an item in the investment policy that states that the city is allowed to invest in bankers' acceptances, domestic and foreign. I'm requesting to remove foreign because I don't think we want to invest in anything that deals with foreign, any kind of instruments.
Excellent. Good job. Very
Thank
good
you.
job.
And there are minor changes, like I said, mostly wording.
Councilmember Sinanian? No comments? No questions? Okay. 2 questions. Exhibit A, the portfolio total. Can you tell me what is the difference between that one and the amount on Exhibit B, investments and cash?
Which one?
Exhibit A, our portfolio total from 2016 to 2017, it increased by $26 million.
Yes, we have different funds that we invest. One is the city funds. If you look at Exhibit A and Exhibit B, the city funds are the same ones, 681, 608. Those are the city funds. And then you have the successor agency funds, the redevelopment agency bonds that are left over from the redevelopment agency, and water and electric revenue bonds. So those, Exhibit A is the total investment funds that we have, and Exhibit B is the city's funds that is allocated to the city only.
Okay, thank you. Great job. So is there a motion to... It's not an item 5.
I move to approve with the changes.
Oh, Mike, is the microphone on? If you could speak up, please.
I move to approve this and accept the changes which our treasurer is asking.
Investment policy.
Our treasurer.
8B and 8C, can we do it?
Yeah, you can do AB and
Yes.
AB1 and ABC1 together because Mr. Kazaki read them in the record together.
8B1 and 8C1.
Right.
Second.
All together.
Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian? Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian?
Yes. Next item, please.
Thank you, Council. Thank you.
Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited. Items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision, and the city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
One card, Robert Wilson.
We don't know. We don't think he's here still.
Okay. I have no more cards. What's next, please? Is there
any
new
new
business?
business?
Yes,
Sinani?
I do have new business, Mr. Mayor. I move that the complaint on behalf of the City of Glendale be brought against Travis Nicholas McElroy for recovery of workers' compensation benefits paid on behalf of employee police officer Steve Corrigan and property damages sustained to a City of Glendale vehicle. I need a second.
Is there a second? Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian? Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian?
Yes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.